organisation has a culture of pushing for better outcomes for the environment and really strong on sustainability. Part of that is adapting our infrastructure in the face of climate change. To do that, we need to test things. We need to work together with others in the industry to look at better and different ways of doing things. And that's what this trial is all about. This project has been a collaboration between Melbourne Water, Merri-bek City Council, the University of Melbourne, and then we've been working with Porous Lane, who have been coming up with new permeable pavement technologies which have been adapted for this permeable curb and channel.
Porous Lane is a unique material developed out of research at the University of Melbourne. It's comprised of approximately 50% recycled tyre, all sourced from Australia, and in this case the tyres were sourced from here in Victoria. It's a unique material in that it has a very high permeability. It infiltrates water at approximately 8 times the guideline that we use, international guideline, and so it's really effective at getting water off the road.
So this is a permeable curb and channel. The idea is that when it's raining, water will fall on what we call our catchment, so the street here in front of us, and it moves through this permeable material. Behind the permeable material, we've got this structural soil trench, and that's what the tree roots will actually grow in. So the water can move through and it can irrigate these recently planted trees. This is great for trying to get the trees to grow more so they suffer less drought stress, but also great in terms of reducing the amount of stormwater runoff that's eventually making its way down to the drainage pit and then into the nearest urban waterway, which can cause issues there. So you can see that the water doesn't move in immediately. It takes a little bit of time before it finally infiltrates through the curb, but we've dumped a lot of water on it in a hurry, and by the time we get to this small pile of leaves here, the water is infiltrating and starting to move in, and therefore not going down the network.
Good evening, councillors, members of the gallery, and to our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Nadabood and I am the Mayor of the Merri-bek City Council and the chairperson for tonight's council meeting for planning and related matters. It is my pleasure to welcome you all here to tonight's meeting. We are meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. We wish to acknowledge them as the traditional custodians of these lands and waterways, and would also like to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, as well as to all First Nations communities who significantly contribute to the life of this city. This council meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to council's website and YouTube. This recording will also be available as video on demand. Attendees are advised that they will be recorded during the meeting. A reminder that as councillors, we will act in accordance with the Councillor Code of Conduct, which will support the principles of leadership and good governance that secures public confidence in the office of councillor. In the event of an emergency or disruption, we may be required to take action to ensure the safety of attendees. For members of the gallery and councillors attending in person, please follow the directions issued by council staff and security officers. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. Councillors and officers in attendance. I'd like to introduce the other councillors in attendance this evening. Councillor Sue Bolton. Councillor Helen Davidson.
Good evening, everyone.
Councillor Liz Irvin.
Hi, everybody.
Councillor Chris Miles is here, but he's just stepped out of the room for a moment. Councillor Adam Pulford.
Hi, everyone.
Councillor Alice Svensson.
Good evening.
Councillor Katarine Theodosis.
Hi, everyone.
And Councillor Oscar Yildiz.
Good evening, everybody.
And I have an apology from Councillor Politis. I'd also like to introduce Phil Priest, the Group Manager of City Development and members of the Urban Planning team. So, as I mentioned, I have an apology from Councillor Politis, and I'll now move on to disclosures of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Councillor Irvin.
Yes, I have a conflict. I'm not sure where it's falling in the order now, but just for the Albert Street development, I have a family member who owns a property next door.
Thank you. Immediately before we consider the item, I'll ask you to provide the details of the type and nature. Yep, and nature of that conflict of interest. And I'll then ask you to leave the meeting before the item is moved and to return after the item has been considered and voted on. And I do believe I have officers with conflicts of interest as well. Yep, so thank you so much. Officers, I'll also ask you to declare the conflict of interest and then ask you to leave the meeting before the item is moved and to return after the item has been considered and voted on. Councillors, could I please have a motion for the confirmation of the minutes of the council meeting for the planning and related matters meeting held on the 28th of January 2026? Councillor Theodosis and a seconder, Councillor Irvin. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried. Before we move on to the reports for consideration, I'll outline how the council meeting for planning and related matters will run this evening. For the items in relation to a planning permit application, the relevant planner will introduce the report and officers' recommendations. Then I will give objectors and supporters the opportunity to make their submission. After this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you're making a submission, please clearly state your name for the record. You are requested to present viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you oppose or support the planning application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues and points not previously raised. If you are opposed to the planning application, would you please inform the meeting why you are opposed and suggest an alternative approach which would satisfy your concerns. Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. Please note that there is a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker and the permit applicant, but as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or reduce the time available to any speaker. Due to a large number of speakers, I seek Council's agreement to change the order of business to consider Report 5.3, which is 932 Sydney Road, Coburg North, planning application, MPS 2025-59, as the last item to enable us to hear from as many objectors as possible. We have 5 reports this evening. The first report is 5.1, City Development Activity Report, December quarter, 2025-26 financial year. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest to disclose? Thank you. Councillors, could I please have a motion? Councillor Irvin, and a seconder, please. Councillor Svensson, thank you. Councillor Irvin, as the mover, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I will. Thank you, Mayor. This is just a regular report that comes before us at this meeting that goes through sort of the city development activity. So this is things like the number of planning applications, the number of applications that have gone to VCAT, what the sort of outcome has been for those cases. And it's, quite a good sort of snapshot of the overview of the planning situation for the last quarter and how that kind of compares to longer term trends as well.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillor Svensson, would you like to speak? Is there a councillor that would like to speak against the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I declare that carried unanimously. The next item is 5.2, 90 Bell Street and 29 to 31 Urquhart Street, Coburg, planning permit application MPS 2024-414, and I believe the council officers have a conflict of interest to disclose.
We do, through you, Mayor. Mr. Hughes and I are involved in the finding
Great. So I'll just ask you to leave the room, please, and we'll come and get you when we're finished. And then I'll ask Alex Osborne, the Principal Urban Planner, to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This item is regarding a planning application at 90 Bell Street to 29 to 31 Urquhart Street in Coburg. It is for Buildings and Works to construct 3 multi-storey buildings to be constructed in stages for a mixed-use health precinct. It includes use of the land for residential, aged care, childcare centre, food and drink premises and shop, subdivision of land into 2 lots, removal and creation of easements to create and alter access to a road in a transport zone 2, and to reduce the car and bike parking requirements. The application relates to 2 sites, one at 90 Bell Street and the other on Urquhart Street, indicated in pink on your screen. The part of the site at 90 Bell Street is currently used for both formal and informal car parking. And the site at Urquhart Street to the north was historically part of the Pentridge grounds, but has sat vacant for the last 25 years or so. Both sites within the activity centre zone. The Bell Street site is within the parking overlay Schedule 1 and the specific controls overlay. The Urquhart Street site is also in the parking overlay and in the environmental audit overlay. In terms of the strategic policy setting, the sites are within precincts 5 and 10 of the activity centre zone. This is where a mixed-use health precinct is envisaged for the locations in the planning scheme. The site is also within the principal public transport network, so it's well connected. The Bell Street site has discretionary height limit of 38.6 metres maximum and a 14.5 metre street wall height. And the Urquhart Street site has a discretionary height limit of 6 to 10 stories. Both sites are identified for landmark buildings in the planning scheme. The proposal is to construct a staged development of 3 separate buildings. This would create a mixed-use health precinct. The buildings are set around a central landscaped area and includes streetscape upgrades. Building C is the first stage. It is 8 to 13 stories and contains the affordable housing apartments and the medical offices. Building B is the second building to be constructed. It is 7 stories in height and is to be used for aged care and childcare. And building A is the hospital. That's the final building to be constructed. It's 9 to 10 stories high. It has commercial uses at ground floor and medical uses at all upper levels. Public notice was undertaken in November and December last year. 5 objections were received, 2 of which are shown on the map and the rest are located outside the mapped area. The main issues raised were car parking and traffic, heritage, building height and bulk, staging, solar access and overshadowing, and the estimated cost of development. A planning information and discussion meeting was not held, given the limited number of objectors, although all were contacted individually. The key considerations for this one are maximum building height, street wall height, car parking, bike parking, and communal open space. It is recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued, and this would be subject to key conditions requiring additional bike parking for Building C and a communal open space area for Building C.
Thank you, Alex. We have 2 objectors who've indicated that they'd like to speak. Eileen Wozkinal. You might do a better job of pronouncing your name than I have. If you'd like to come in. Come on in. It's automatic, that door. It's a very welcoming door. There's a button on that bottom of that microphone that's probably red if you want to make it green.
It's green.
Yeah, fantastic. And could you say your surname for me?
You did very well.
Oh, good.
It's Woskinell.
Woskinell. Okay, good. Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Lee, and I'm a resident of Coburg. The few hundred parking spaces proposed in this new development are vastly inadequate. Therefore, the request by the developers to reduce parking should most definitely not be granted. In fact, the number of parking spaces should be vastly increased. Why? Obviously, due to the lack of on-site parking proposed, many vehicles will be forced to park in surrounding streets to the south of Bell Street, and the impact on the residents will be immense. Where will council staff park, of which there are many? The council's idea to encourage staff to ride bikes, etc., with the offer of change rooms, showers, new bike cages, is an indication that the council is agreeable to having less parking spaces. Council management level will probably be given free allocated parking on the site. But where will the council workers who don't ride bikes to work park? The block on the corner of Bell Street and Pentridge Boulevard already has vehicles parked there 7 days a week. And many of those days, this area, this large area, is completely full. Where will all those hundreds of drivers park when they attend the many meetings, social occasions, etc., that are held at both the Town Hall and the civic offices? And what about the staff and visitors to the proposed mixed-use health precinct, the residential aged care, the childcare centre, food and drink premises, etc.? Yes, there will be some who will use public transport or cycle, but let's be honest, many will drive and will be forced to park in the surrounding streets. As 2 of the proposed developments will be operating 24 hours a day, they will require shift workers who will be arriving and leaving both very early in the day and late at night, which will most certainly have a detrimental impact on the lives of the said residents. Also, many of the residents in the surrounding streets to the south of Bell Street will probably be forced to park in other nearby streets because they will be unable to park near their own homes. Is the council's traffic management department going to actually share a detailed plan of how this increase in local traffic will impact the residents before this council accepts the development's proposal? And so to finish, I just want to say that if this council does not insist on increased parking in these proposed developments, but goes ahead with the requested sad lack of adequate parking, they are showing complete disregard for the impact that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, increased traffic will have on the lives of residents to the south of Bell Street.
Thank you, Lee.
Sorry, I just want to say one small thing. And yes, I also want to add that as a 73-year-old resident of Bud Street, who isn't getting any younger, I do not actually have off-street parking. So my life will most certainly be impacted by Merri-bek Council's acceptance of the lack of adequate parking in this new development.
Thanks, Lee. I'll now ask Marilyn Moore to come to the lectern, if you're out there, Marilyn. I haven't seen Marilyn. Nick Dolby, if you'd like to come in while we wait to see if Marilyn's here. Hi, Nick.
Hello, councillors. Nick Dolby, West Brunswick. Brief note, in order to encourage this development's residents and workers to use Coburg shops, we also need to be strongly looking at an increased pedestrian crossing at Elm Grove and Bell Street. We want people from this development to be going to Coburg shops, to be activating that area, and we need to be pushing the state government to do something about that pedestrian crossing. Thank you.
Thanks for your contribution, Nick. Asanka, are you out there? I haven't seen Asanka either. Have you seen Asanka? Okay. All right. Are there any other people in attendance in the gallery tonight who wish to address council on this application? Yep. Come in. So if I can just confirm you're Fabio. Yes. Hi, Fabio. So I'm just calling upon you as the permit applicant or representative of the permit applicant to make your submission, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Fabio and I'm one of the directors of Coburg Health Hub. Tonight I'm here to speak about the project that has been more than 5 years in the making. A project shaped through sustained collaboration with council officers, external authorities, and importantly, the Coburg community. The vision for the Coburg Healthcare Precinct is grounded in a simple but powerful principle that healthcare, housing, and community services should be integrated, accessible, and located where people actually live their lives. We know that when essential services sit together in the heart of the community, people experience better outcomes. Whether they are families with young children, older residents, people living with disability, or those seeking timely healthcare. Stage 1 of the precinct reflects this integrated approach. It includes approximately 5,000 square metres of not-for-profit community health and allied health services. Residential aged care, disability accommodation, a childcare centre and 120 affordable dwellings. These are not abstract planning concepts, they are real, tangible supports for people at every stage of life. They are the kinds of services that keep communities strong, connected and resilient. Stage 2 will deliver a private hospital and consulting suites. This is a significant investment in Merri-bek's health infrastructure. It will strengthen local access to specialist care and reduce the need for residents to travel outside the municipality for treatment. For many people, particularly older residents, people with chronic conditions and families juggling work and caring responsibility, that matters enormously. Over the past 5 years, this proposal has been rigorously tested. It has undergone multiple design iterations in response to detailed scrutiny from planning, internal council departments, and specialist referral authorities. We have welcomed that scrutiny and it has made the project stronger. We have also engaged extensively with the community, including the Coburg Historical Society, and their feedback has helped shape the design. This precinct now includes open landscape public areas and connect the buildings and create a welcoming, permeable environment. These spaces are designed to feel like part of the neighbourhood and not separate from it. We understand that development in Merri-bek must deliver genuine community benefit. This project does exactly that. It provides affordable housing at a scale that responds to real need. It expands access to healthcare. It supports ageing residents and people with disability. And it invests in long-term social infrastructure that will serve the community for decades to come.
Thanks, Fabio.
No worries, thank you.
Councillors, do you have questions for the applicant? No. Okay, I'll ask councillors if there is a motion, please, regarding this application. Councillor Miles, would you like to put the officer recommendation?
To put the officer's recommendation, sorry.
That's all right. And Councillor Pulford, you're seconding. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to the application?
No, I've got nothing to add.
Yep. Councillor Pulford?
Sure. Yes, this has been a long time coming. Council bought this block of land, well, the one near us, not the block across the road on Urquhart Street, years ago, and for a long time Council's been hoping that it would be a site for jobs for our community. It's really exciting that there's going to be a health hub here, and that over the last year, we started this process, I think, back in 2021 in terms of working with these developers to bring health facilities to our community, and also to make sure that a bunch of those health facilities are community health facilities as well. Over the years, it's developed to include some affordable housing as well, which I think is really exciting. And there'll also be childcare provided and aged care. So really, it's going to be a bustling hub when it's all completed. I know it's going to be a long process of construction, and there'll be impacts on the residents that do live nearby. But there also aren't that many residents nearby because of the site that it is. It's next to council buildings, it's next to the school, it's next to a lot of open paddock still. I think this is important for our community to have healthcare services, aged care services, childcare services, and affordable housing. But it's also great to have those jobs based in our community, people who will be coming into work at these facilities. And as a resident pointed out, going into Coburg itself and shopping at our local stores and just bringing more life into the area. I think it is important that we have change from, it's definitely not the best use of land as it is, that kind of open paddock that's used as car parking. And I hear that there's concerns from residents about the level of car parking. But while one building undersupplies car parking for what would be recommended, the other buildings actually have a bit of a surplus. So it doesn't equal out, but there is a lot of car parking in these precincts planned. So I'm very happy to support this. I know it's been a lot of work from a lot of different people, and it's still got a lot of work to come, but it's an important part of our decision making tonight, looking at this permit. There's been some great recommendations from officers in terms of making sure there's some more open space in the precinct. Not as much as we would have liked, but these things are often working out what's possible. With the project partners. So pleased to support this evening and hope that it passes the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Is there a councillor that would like to speak against the application? Councillor Bolton?
Actually, I had meant to raise this early in the day and I just noticed it, but it's a straightforward one. Condition 30B, with regard to affordable housing, talks about the affordable housing only being affordable for a minimum of 30 years. I would like to replace that, that minimum of 30 years with in perpetuity.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is that acceptable to the mover and the seconder? Do you have a question, Councillor Miles? Application.
How would that affect the permit going forward with what the developers are doing?
Thank you. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Miles. The alternative recommendation or the change proposed by Councillor Bolton would change the arrangements that the developer then has with the affordable housing provider beyond that which has been negotiated, I think, as part of this application. I guess there's obviously those commercial implications for that. The change would mean that rather than the time specified in the permit, then obviously ongoing provision of affordable housing. So not insignificant, I would say.
And Councillor Pulford has a question.
Are we able to ask a question of the proponent? Can we put that question to you in terms of, do you have funding arrangements with other levels of government that specify the time frame of the affordable housing?
So the way it works is the housing provider has got that agreement in place with the state government. So the state government is, through their big build, is funding the affordable housing component with the not-for-profit housing provider. And the agreement is for that 30 years. Beyond the 30 years, I'm not sure how that works. So it's really just back-to-backing the agreement that the housing provider has with the state government. So I'd probably say it'd be difficult to change that to in perpetuity at this stage, yeah.
Councillor Svensson, you have a question?
And am I right in understanding it's for a minimum of 30 years?
Correct.
So there's the opportunity, if the state government hopefully decides to provide funding after that period, it can be extended further?
Look, I don't know that detail, but I would assume so, similar to yourself, yeah. It is a minimum of 30 years, yeah.
So can I just check again, is the proposed amendment acceptable to the mover and the seconder of the motion? Okay, so Councillor Bolton, for the sake of process, I need to ask you if you have a seconder for your amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge Marilyn has arrived. Because I have a motion in front of me, from the perspective of governance, I can't allow you to speak now. Thank you. Thanks, Marilyn. So is there now a councillor that would like to speak against the proposed motion? Another councillor who would like to speak in support? Councillor Irvin?
Yes, I just wanted to briefly address the concerns about the car parking rates within this development. So at the end of last year, the state government did have pretty major reform in terms of the requirements for car parking, and that applies across all different types of development. And while this application was made before that, and also there's a parking overlay, so there are some complexities, I still think that those new rates are really useful to use as a guide for what sort of reduction is reasonable. And in this particular case, there are a lot of different aspects to this application. There's a hospital, there's offices, childcare, aged care, and residential dwellings. But really, for most of those categories, the new state government rates, there's no minimum car parking required, and there's a very small amount of minimum car parking for some of those uses. So I'm quite satisfied that the provision within this, does actually, I think, exceed the new rates. And there's been some in-depth studies into the car parking demand that really back up how those levels were sort of realised in the end. So I am confident and comfortable with the car parking that's proposed in this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Are there other councillors who would like to speak to the application? No, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. As I mentioned, I've moved the Sydney Road Coburg North application to the end of the meeting so that we'll have enough time to hear from the people who wish to speak. So I'll now move to item 5.4, which is 278 to 282 Albert Street, Brunswick, planning permit application MPS 2025-369, and ask for conflicts of interest. Councillor Irvin?
Yes, I have a general conflict of interest on this item. I just have a family member who owns a property next door to this one.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Before we move on, sorry, Alex, I should have invited you back to the lectern to outline the next steps of the last motion. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. The council has decided to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for 3 multi-storey buildings in stages, use of the land for residential aged care, childcare, food and drink and shop, subdivision of land, removal and creation of easements, alteration of access to a transport zone 2 and reduction of car and bike parking, subject to the conditions within the recommendation. Following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and all objector parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision. Objectors will have 28 days to appeal council's decision at VCAT. In the event that no appeal is lodged at VCAT, a planning permit will be issued. If a permit is issued, the applicant has 60 days from the date of issue to appeal any conditions.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Councillor Irvin. It's your time to shine, Alex. Welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So the next item on the agenda is a planning application at 278 to 282 Albert Street in Brunswick. This one is for the construction of a 9-storey building, reduction of car parking requirements, buildings and works and demolition of a building in the heritage overlay. This application is at decision stage. The site is located on the southern side of Albert Street. It has a laneway along its eastern boundary. To the west and south of the site are multi-storey apartment buildings. The site's within the commercial 1 zone. It is also in the development contributions plan overlay, parking overlay, design and development overlay, and the heritage overlay. In terms of the strategic policy setting, it's in the Brunswick Major Activity Centre. It's also in DDO 18, where there is a discretionary maximum height limit of 25 metres and a street wall limit of between 11 and 14 metres. The site is therefore designated for significant housing growth within the Merri-bek planning scheme. The proposed application is for a Part 8, Part 9 storey building. It would have 42 apartments, a retail tenancy at ground floor, 34 car parks and a total of 58 bike parks. 34 objections were received during the public notice period, with the main issues being daylight access, overshadowing and building height. A planning information and discussion meeting was held in February 2026, and this was attended by Councillor Liz Irvin, Council Planning Officers, the applicant and 12 objectors, and discussion plans were circulated after that meeting to address some council issues. The key considerations are daylight, outlook and future development opportunity, off-site amenity impacts, and that's mainly to the neighbouring apartment building, and building height and street wall height. The recommendation is to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit, and that would be subject to key conditions requiring amendments to some of the apartment layouts and some additional screening at first floor. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. We have 5 objectors who've indicated that they'd like to speak, and I'll call first Lachlan Wang in person. If you'd like to come in.
Hello, good day. My name is Lachlan Wang. I object the building development based on the height, the size, and the design in overall. I think it's lack of consideration of existing neighborhood, the community, and the streetscape. As I live next to the development site on level 5, facing the rooftop internal garden, with a new building coming up, with 2 levels above our level, the building will create a concrete wall to block the sunlight, the airflow, and just for the sake of building a corridor to access a 3-bedroom apartment on each floor. So I feel it's the design, it is a poor design. Our current building, 288, next to the site, it's designed in a way, as they move further to the street, the building gets a bit taller. So it's not like dominating the streetscape. It's hardly visible, actually, from the scenic road. And it's beautiful. But this building coming up, it's just creating this gigantic building block. And it just completely block the current garden responding to the street. So I just think possibly change that concrete corridor to breezeways to allow some airflow, connectivity to the street.
Thank you, Lachlan.
Yep, thank you.
I now ask Keiko Boswick to please come into the room. Thanks, Keiko. Thank you.
But I didn't print my speech.
That's okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Keiko Boswick, and I'm here to object to the proposed development at 278 Albert Street in Brunswick. As you know, this is a 9-story development. Within the planning documentations, it says 41 apartments, though I hear now it's 42. In addition to demolishing a heritage-listed site, the proposal directly violates the building standards of the state of Victoria by eliminating natural light and privacy for both the existing buildings as well as the apartments in the new development. I live at 343 Sydney Road, and this is positioned just south of the proposed building. The developers have given very little attention to the impact of the development on the residents in my building specifically. Over 50% of our building are home to NDIS residents who have developed their apartments and renovated them in order to suit their physical and mental needs, providing better access to quality of life and to the care that they need. I've had an architect complete a solar study to examine the impact of the proposed development on the natural light access, and this is what you see in front of you. You'll see from the sheet that this 9-story building will completely eliminate all natural light to a level two north-facing balconies at 343 Sydney Road, and these are residents who are NDIS residents. If you flip the sheet over, you'll also see an example from higher up in the building on level 5, where it nearly eliminates, again, all of the natural light access to this building. Access to natural light is a human need, and that's a precedent that was set by Merri-bek Council itself just a couple of years ago. And there's a reason that building standards protect this need for people, because it's scientifically shown to increase quality of life and physical and mental health. There are also significant privacy concerns. The development is proposed to be just 4 meters away from 343 Sydney Road, with apartments that look directly into the existing ones. An entryway toilet is quite literally the only room in my apartment that will not have a direct line of sight into these new proposed apartments. This is true on every floor of the development, completely eliminating privacy for both of the buildings. If 41 or 42 apartments is what's proposed for this development to add to the Merri-bek community, let us account for the loss of privacy and natural light to 14 apartments at 343 Sydney Road, at least a further 4 apartments from 288 Albert Street, the objector that you just heard, and now we're down to 27 net apartments with this proposed building. If you account for the loss of privacy and the light concerns in the proposed building itself, there are 8 apartments on the southern end of this building. We're down to just 19 apartments. There are many options for this land, and if it must be developed, an apartment unit with just 19 apartments, something that actually meets building standards, is what should be considered. I was not given the opportunity to present any information at this consultation meeting that was mentioned earlier. So listen to the 34 objections that are for this proposed building. It's not 41 apartments, it's just 19.
Thank you. I'd now like to hear from Fiona McGrath, who's online. Yep. Hi, Fiona.
My name's Fiona and I'm a resident of Albert Street at 288 Albert Street. I raise an objection to the proposed development for the following reasons. The proposal appears to seek significant exceptions to the standard setback requirements and fails to respect existing building separation. Pardon? My name's Fiona and I'm a resident of Albert Street at 288
If you just turn off your stream.
The proposal appears to seek significant exceptions to the...
Okay, keep going, Fiona.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Just trying to see where everything was up to.
Yeah, we've all done that. Don't worry about it.
So the current proposal seeks significant exemptions to standard setback requirements and fails to respect building separation established when 284 to 294, which is our building known as 288 Albert Street, was approved. The current design building height and bulk will greatly impede access to natural light and airflow, most especially into level 5 apartments, especially with the proposed walkway in the proposal. The communal garden on level 5 of our building is a significant source of airflow and light to numerous level 5 apartments which face onto the garden, especially those closest to the eastern edge of our building. This didn't seem to have been understood until reiterated at the end of the planning information and discussion meeting that Council conducted in February. I've had no feedback on any potential amendments to the proposal as a result of the myriad issues raised by myself and other residents at this meeting. The use of an external walkway to share a single lift and rooftop space between two modules in that proposal is a cost-saving measure that creates unreasonable bulk and amenity impacts to the eastern face of 288 Albert Street. I'm not opposed to development on the site, but any proposal needs to be appropriate and respect the amenity of the current existing buildings, the current residents' access to light, airflow and privacy. This proposal, in my opinion, does not do this. The amenity of 288 Albert Street, the building and the surrounds is why I chose to buy and live in Merri-bek, and there will be material ongoing amenity impacts to myself and to others, as we've heard, in both building A and B of 288 Albert development, should the council approve this proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. I now ask Patricia, Spina and Roke Grillo, who are also online. Hello there.
Hello, sorry.
Okay.
A bit delayed, sorry about that.
No
Hi,
problem.
my name's Patricia Spina and we are also at 288 Alberts Road. We are also on level 5 and we voiced objections to this based on exactly all the things other people have said. So the fact that my apartment backs onto the garden area, it is also set back from the street with a window there. This building, unfortunately, will block not only the light and air coming from my back window, but also my front and my balcony. I don't think, and I'm again exactly like what other people have said, I do not object to a building going up there, but as soon as I saw the plans for this, straight away, I just went, it cannot go ahead as it is. And I'm not going to repeat the things that other people have said, but basically, lack of privacy, a building, we are literally on the edge of level 5 on the eastern side, so the building will go up directly where our apartment is. So it means that because they're not set back, it will block our front, and because it's also taking up the area where our garden area is, where our back window looks onto, that will also be blocked. I don't think they've taken a lot of things into consideration, and I also think that according to a lot of the other people, they haven't, their planning hasn't gone appropriately for what is expected in the area. And again, I don't object to anything going up there, but the way it is at the moment, I object to that going up.
Thank you, Patricia. We have one supporter who's indicated that they'd like to speak. Asanka, but I don't know that Asanka is here. No, thanks, Nick. So are there other people in attendance in the gallery who... Yeah, thanks. That's why I'm asking. Hello there.
Apology, Chair. I did reply saying I was going to speak, but I think it's somehow got missed. But my name is Peter Tregear.
Thank you, Peter.
I'm actually in behalf of the Owners Corporation of 341 Sydney Road. So we're on Sydney Road to the south. I'm not going, again, I'll be as brief as I can. I don't want to repeat. I think there's been excellent points made already, but there's a couple of points that haven't been. So, and I wanted to start with, actually, I was here at the start of the meeting when the comment was made generally that these meetings are run in a way to ensure confidence in the planning system. Because one of the things that just really hasn't been emphasised enough, that this proposal actually breaks various standards that have been put into the public sphere. And I really would emphasise that if you want to have residents to have confidence in the planning system, those guidelines have to mean something. So we have and even with the new activity centre that the state government has put forward, it says that a maximum of 8 stories. So now we have a proposal that's 9 stories. I mean, it just seems every time, and for us, I have to say in our building, there's deja vu here because we were, and I was involved in objecting to the development which a number of the objectors now live in. It's 14 stories. Now, if you go to the activity centre that the government proposes, it still says 8 for that site. And so this is a way to say that what one of these applications does not do is address what is already there. That is the context here, that we already have effectively a broken commitment that is already in that building. And I just don't think it's an appropriate planning to simply put up a building that doesn't reference that. I mean, that decision to build a 14-storey building has consequences, not least for the residents in it. It has consequences for all the rest of us. So there's this general question of bulk. Second issue, which I don't think has been emphasised enough, is mix. And there's 2 issues I want to raise here. One, and if anyone who goes into this area will know that one of the things that development 284 was made to have was to have ground floor commercial tenancies. Have you noticed how many of them are not occupied? In other words, we have a planning problem there that this not only does not solve, it actually worsens. And that failure to actually support the commercial tenancies that are there, to actually be occupied, creates all sorts of antisocial problems that, if you like, socialises problems for the council and for residents that just haven't been addressed. Secondly, I'm just going to stand up for the tenancy that's actually there. We need a good garage in the area. And if we're going to increase the population, massively in this area, we have to think about the kind of mix of services we need. And actually getting rid of that garage actually is an issue. And the third issue, and obviously this has come up already, is design. And I have to say that when we actually got Merri-bek planners to come and talk to us after the building that 284 was finished, and one of their comments, quote unquote, was this was a textbook example of bad design because it failed to respond to the environment there. And what we have already is, in fact, dangerous walking environments with unsafe and graffiti, drug use, dumping of rubbish and so on. And the more we pack in high-density buildings with a lack of, if you like, breathable space, the more they're going to get worse. And the other thing that I think has been emphasised enough is...
Just conscious of the time, Peter.
Yes, but sorry, I apologise, I've come to an end, is actually the traffic impacts on Albert Street. I mean, those of you who might go for their coffee at Project 281 and so on will know there's already traffic queues going in and out of Albert Street. You're going to put in a sharp turn into a new residency that is actually going to have traffic banking up both ways, and I don't think that the planning around the traffic actually is fully thought through what that will mean, added to the problem of lack of parking as well.
Thank you, Peter.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other people from the gallery who'd like to speak to this application? If not, I will call upon the permit applicant or a representative of the permit applicant to make a submission, and I believe David Song is in the gallery. Oh, sorry, David is online. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, and good evening, councillors and Mayor. I'm a town planning consultant here on behalf of the permit applicant, and I just wanted to say that we fully support the recommendation that's been made by officers. We think it's a well-reasoned report. In response to some of the matters that have been raised, we wanted to make the point of saying that the site is within the Brunswick Major Activity Centre and earmarked for significant change. That change has occurred and is continuing to occur. I won't go through the planning controls because it's all set out in the report for you, but it is a location where the preferred future height is 25 metres. That's what's expected. It's not an absolute height or mandatory height, as others might suggest. And in fact, what's proposed here is a building that is only 2.6 or 2.7 metres above that preferred height, but you won't see that from Albert Street. So it is relevant that there is a building next door to us that others have acknowledged of, I think, 14 stories. This building at our site does take some cues for that. For instance, the street wall height matches up with it, which is good urban design practice. And the design has taken some cues from that building, but also it is uniquely presenting to the street as well. It's a good urban design outcome, one that council's internal referral comments from all of them, including urban design, including from heritage, traffic engineering, are all supportive. There's been collaboration between the council's internal referral commentary and from our end in terms of our experts too. And we commend what we say is a well-considered, well-reasoned officer report that's been prepared for this application. And we seek that that recommendation be endorsed by the council, clearly subject to the conditions in the notice. In terms of the amenity within the development, I don't think anyone's necessarily that critical of that, but it is high quality amenity, we say. And at a time when Victoria is experiencing a housing shortage, the provision of 42 apartments on this site above retail space in the activity centre, activating the street frontage, should be considered, in my view, a very positive planning outcome. The car parking, we say, is well justified on the site. I won't go into that in too much detail. And in terms of some of the amenity impacts that have been raised by people living nearby, we say it has appropriately dealt with matters such as daylight, sunlight access, overlooking visual impact. In our view, the council should approve the application because it does exactly what the planning scheme expects this site to do. It contributes positively to the streetscape with a high quality architecturally designed building that's well resolved while providing quality accommodation without unreasonably affecting the amenity of its neighbours. It represents what we say is the type of change the council should embrace. So we do thank you for the opportunity to make this submission. We do hope the council adopts the officer's recommendation and seeks to approve the proposal. We're not dismissive of some of the comments that have been made from the objectors, but we simply say that it would be incorrect to say that our proposal seeks to depart widely from the planning scheme. In fact, we say it is a considered response to the planning scheme.
Thank you, David. Are there questions for the applicant? David, I've got a couple. Oh, Councillor Bolton, you have a question?
What is the applicant proposing to do to resolve the issue of destroying the sunlight access for the next door building?
So, sorry, in terms of the next door building, do you mean the building to the south?
I'm talking about the building that many of the objectors are from, who are talking about the overshadowing of the communal garden.
Okay.
It's 343 Sydney Road, I believe.
I say, okay. I thought that the communal garden, as I understand it, is to the west of the subject site at 288. That's the communal garden that I understand exists at level 5, essentially, of that development. Like the council planning officers, we don't think that it will destroy sunlight to that space. In fact, what is proposed on the boundary there is what we would say is to be expected by the planning scheme, where there is an 8-storey preference for buildings there. So yes, there's a wall on the boundary, but it's not an 8-storey wall on that boundary, of course. It's not when you get to the terrace. It really presents as really something that would be maybe equivalent to a 2 to 3-storey height, but we certainly wouldn't say it's got that form of 8 stories to it. So, and also, we're not to the north of that terrace, we are to the east of it. So it's not the case that our development creates a shadow over that space all day long.
Thank you, David. Are there other questions from councillors? David, I'm interested to know whether you think that there's some flexibility with that wall that heads back to protect that walkway to the 3-bedroom dwellings. Is there a way that that wall can be made less, I guess, intrusive? Could it be breeze blocks, as was suggested, or could it be a permeable scenario where, you know, light and can get through?
I think the short answer is to that, yes, it could certainly be that. And there were discussions about that. I think you would have read this in the council officer's recommendation about some of those plans that were prepared as concepts to show how a breezeway could work along that location as well. But ultimately, officers, I think, raised the issue that might present concerns for other people. because there is certainly a view that some might take that a wall on the boundary provides the ultimate level of privacy. There's certainly no privacy issue raised from that, whereas a breezeway can raise those sorts of issues of privacy. But it certainly was considered. It wasn't dismissed, and it was and yes, the short answer is there are options.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I have for you is just to do with the financial model of the development. I don't know if it's okay for me to ask this or whether you can answer, but I think part of the problem with those empty commercial premises is often to do with the financial model. And I'm wondering about the financial model of this development. Do you think this is the kind of thing where it suits the developers to leave those properties empty, or is it a scenario where it is a priority of the applicants that those commercial properties are filled?
I certainly think that my clients would want to see those commercial properties filled, and I think there was a deliberate decision made not to make those spaces too big. So you'll see that, for instance, the proposal, I think it includes at that ground level, it's 137 square metres, if I'm not mistaken, of space at ground floor that activates the street frontage, but doesn't make it so large that it becomes unattractive to be used.
Thank you. Councillors, could I please have a motion regarding this application? Anyone? Thank you, Councillor Pulford. And a seconder? Councillor Svensson, would you like to speak to the application?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, residents, for coming to speak with us tonight to raise your concerns about this development. When we're making planning decisions as council, we're operating within a state government system that really limits our powers and our ability to make, I guess, strong decisions based on feedback that we hear. We have these frameworks that are set. And this is this is the heart of Brunswick. It's in an activity centre zone. The state government is looking at changing the activity centre zoning for Brunswick and Coburg, as well as many other places around the city. We are in a housing crisis. We do need more homes, and this is providing more homes, and it's homes close to public transport, the train line and the tram line. It's homes close to services, to shops, to Brunswick Baths. I hear the concerns about the ground level commercial spaces in that precinct. The ones on Albert Street, I think, are all occupied, but there are those ones that are kind of tucked away a little bit behind that, and there have been some issues with dumping there, for example, that I know council's responded to at a couple of times. I think having, at the moment, that block of land is used as a garage, and it sounds like it's a good garage, but it is right in the heart of Brunswick, and I think we could get more out of that site, and I think homes is a good use of that site for the reasons I said earlier. I think with more people moving into that area, you'll actually have more passive surveillance, more people walking around, more people walking through the precinct and the shops, and I think that'll actually help discourage antisocial behaviour there. At the moment, it's kind of tucked away, but I think when it's more activated and there's more people, you do get more movement and less kind of that dumping or poor behaviour. It is, 9 stories. It's shorter than the 14-storey next door. I think if we were to put any too strict conditions on this, it would essentially just go straight to VCAT, and VCAT would look at the state government changes proposed to that area and would tick it off. And so I'm happy to support the officer recommendation here tonight, where there have been those increased setbacks negotiated, which will help address some of the concerns about overshadowing. I know not all of them. And I think that we don't have the ability to kind of enforce right to sunlight to all apartments, unfortunately. So, operating in the state government system we are operating within, I think this provides more homes. It'll provide a better use of that site. It is in an activity centre. There is close to transport and services. I'm happy to support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Councillor Svensson.
I think developments like this really highlight, a lot of problems that we have with the planning scheme, and a lot of problems we have with the way that the state government has been changing council's ability to input into planning decisions. I would love to be able to push a lot harder on a lot of the concerns that have been raised by residents. But what we have to do as councillors is really weigh the wins that we're able to get through putting conditions in these applications, of which there are some wins in here that I'm really pleased that the applicant and officers have been able to negotiate. But ultimately, if we push into areas where we don't have a strong legal backing to do so, what ends up happening, as Councillor Pulford has alluded to, is that these applications end up at VCAT, and that spends a substantial amount of ratepayer and taxpayer money. And often what happens is actually we get worse outcomes, because often at the time that applications get to VCAT, applicants decide, you know what, we're not going to even do the conditions that we've already previously agreed to. And VCAT, as we all know, is often incredibly permissive with what they allow. So we're in a really tricky position here of trying to get the best possible outcome, both in terms of the building itself, the development itself, but also in terms of cost to ratepayers. So I certainly wish we had an application sitting in front of us that had far more substantial conditions that we were confident that we could defend at VCAT, that protected more of that right to sunlight. I agree that is a human right, and I want to see our planning scheme updated so we're more effectively able to protect that right. But at the time, we don't currently have that ability ahead of us, and that's really an advocacy angle that we need to be pushing, is to return powers into the planning scheme that allow residents to have more of a say in the developments that are built in their areas, because we don't just need more housing, we need more good quality housing, and we know that that's often not the case. But I think this is the best outcome that we can get in a really tricky scheme right now, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Councillor Bolton.
I'm going to speak against this application. I think the applicant should go back and redesign the building to put sunlight onto their neighbours, to allow their neighbours to have sunlight. There's an actual diagnosed condition called seasonal affective disorder, which does affect people, and usually it tends to occur in winter and you know, fix itself in springtime. But what was handed around by one of the objectors, and I haven't had contact with the objectors prior to today, which shows one level which has entirely got no sunlight access during the day, and another one the other side, which is higher in their building, which has just a sliver of sunlight. I just think it's not conscionable for Merri-bek to actually pass a development like that. I know the limitations of the planning scheme, where, as noted by the council planners in the report, that there is no protection for communal areas. I think that's quite outrageous. There should be some protections, maybe not as much in the activity centre zones, but there should be some protection. Otherwise, these apartment blocks are going to be unlivable. And yes, I'm all for housing, but it's got to be housing that people can live in. Otherwise, people will just be there either very short term or because they're desperate. And one of the objectors earlier said that something like 50% of people in the building are, I don't know if it's NDIS housing or they're on NDIS. I didn't quite catch that part. But I just think, and presumably a lot of those people will be prisoners in this building because they can't move out. Now, I know there are limits. The applicant, probably by the sound of it, to present an application like this that's so horrific for the neighbours, probably would take it to VCAT. But sometimes, VCAT, yes, it is a developer's body, but sometimes if the objectors are in a position to go to VCAT, if the council rejects this, sometimes through the mediation process you can get improvements. And there are different building designs. The applicant could have designed a different kind of building that isn't so horrific for the neighbours. I really feel for the people in the neighbouring building if this goes ahead. So I urge councillors to vote against it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Miles?
Can I ask a question of the council officers? Had you guys seen this before? Had this been brought to your attention?
Check with the officers. Yep. Thanks,
Thank you,
Alex.
Alex.
Thanks, Councillor Miles. Yeah, I understand if, thanks. Yeah, I understand it. Yeah, it did form an attachment with one of the objections submitted.
And just, is this, what I'm trying to get at, is this, not saying anything, but I'm saying, has this been cherry-picked to be the worst day?
The application's assessed against a setback standard in the planning scheme, and that's about securing daylight for future occupants.
Yeah.
It meets all of those setback standards,
Yeah.
and the setback of that building to the south as well, to the common boundary, a lot of those bedrooms are set back 3 metres, which is also what the planning scheme seeks buildings to do. So when you combine them both, the separation complies with the planning scheme as well.
So you would agree that that is correct, what we're seeing here?
It's just not a tool that we use.
Okay.
So it's not something that we can use in our assessment.
You can't
we
say
have to
it's-
refer to
yeah.
the planning scheme
Yeah.
in our assessment of daylight access and sunlight access.
Okay.
So can't really comment on that tool because it's not one of our tools in the planning scheme.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. There are other councillors who would like to speak to the application. Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine. I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Against? I declare that lost. So what do we do? So I think we need to adjourn because we don't have an alternative motion. So I'll just need a minute. I'll need a motion to adjourn the meeting, please. Thank you, Councillor Bolton and Councillor Davidson to second. We'll just take 5 minutes to work out an alternate motion so that we have something to put. Yeah. Thank you, councillors. Yeah, thanks everybody and welcome back to the council meeting. What I need now is a motion to adjourn the meeting for a further 20 minutes to work out a way forward. Thank you, Councillor Pulford, and a seconder. Councillor Miles, thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Hello to the gallery and everybody watching the live stream. So where we got to is we've reconvened the meeting. The motion that was lost just before we adjourned the meeting requires us to have an alternate motion, so I'll ask for that alternate motion now. Councillor Bolton?
I've got an alternative motion to refuse to grant a planning permit, and if I've got a seconder, I can read up the basis of it.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson.
Okay, thanks. So this is a motion to refuse to grant a planning permit. Now, unfortunately, it can't take up the grounds of the loss of sunlight for various sort of legal planning scheme issues, but it's focusing on the issues of failure to ensure the setback of a building from a boundary appropriately, and that the buildings are not set back from the side and rear boundaries sufficiently, and other buildings within the site to ensure the dwellings are designed to meet the objectives of the planning scheme, that the proposal would provide inadequate building separation to the lower level dwellings to the south, impacting dwelling amenity, that the proposed walkway is inadequately set back from the level 5 communal terrace of the western neighbouring apartment building, resulting in unacceptable visual bulk. Second ground, that the proposed development fails to ensure the reasonable future development opportunities of the eastern neighbouring properties. And lastly, the ground floor southern communal terrace and its secluded private open space of dwelling 107 would result in direct views to the southern neighbouring apartment bedrooms, contrary to the planning scheme. I won't say much more because I know we've got a lot of people here for another application shortly, other than to say I thank the council officers for rushing to try and put this together when it hadn't been anticipated, but I hadn't heard all of the arguments by the objectors about this building prior to the meeting, so I wasn't able to respond to some of those with a motion to refuse a planning permit in advance of this meeting. But I thank the objectors for coming along and explaining the issues with this application.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Davidson, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you. And I too would like to thank the officers. And I think what this shows is that council is responsive and is able to make decisions based on hearing objections from residents who are directly affected. And based on that, in all good conscience, myself and the councillors who weren't able to support this could not vote to support such an application. And we still have a responsibility to act in accordance with the community's views and listen to the community. And this is what has happened tonight. It's been a bit of a longer process, but it shows democracy working. So thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for presenting your viewpoints and for caring deeply about the community that you live in.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. Is there a councillor that would like to speak against the alternate motion? Councillor Pulford.
Yeah, look, I understand that this refusal is what residents have asked for, and you'll notice that, as Councillor Bolton said, there is no condition about protecting sunlight, and that's kind of what Councillor Svensson and I were arguing, is that the state planning scheme doesn't give us the power to enforce things like right to sunlight. My fear is that this will go straight to VCAT, and VCAT will just approve the development. And one of the concerns has been about access to sunlight and privacy as well, and how the original proposal didn't have far enough setbacks. Our officers, through the planning permit process, have negotiated with the applicant to increase the setbacks, which would reduce privacy concerns and some overshadowing concerns. And this now could be lost at VCAT, which means that the apartments could be closer together. I hope it doesn't happen, but just kind of explain why we didn't support a refusal in the first place. We are very limited by the state government scheme and what grounds we can find on, and obviously developers want to go and get their developments approved, so they often rush straight to VCAT, which can result in a worse development outcome because the conditions negotiated by our officers aren't kept. They're usually the first things on the chopping block. We do need more housing, but we need to make sure it's good quality housing, and we are limited as a council in our ability to enforce that through the state planning scheme. And so we'll keep fighting as a council, along with many other councils we've joined forces with, to pressure the state government to improve the state planning scheme so councils do have more of a say and local communities can influence what happens in their neighbourhoods. But yeah, just wanted to make it clear that, just explain why are still not supporting this refusal, because I do believe it will just be overridden at VCAT.
Thank you, Councillor Pulford. Are there other councillors that would like to speak? I'll just make a quick comment myself. The first time the vote happened, I actually abstained from voting because I could see that it made no difference which way I voted at the time, and that the initial motion wasn't going to get through. But I do plan to vote against Councillor Bolton's proposed alternate motion, only because, again, I don't think it will make any difference how I vote, but I actually think that it's important to reinforce the fact that this is very highly likely, if it goes to VCAT, to be lost at VCAT, and also make the point that since 2016, when we had these kind of applications coming through the chamber all of the time that we could do nothing about, that were of a really low standard, the planning scheme had lots and lots of amendments put to it from the Merri-bek City Council planners to change it for the better. And I think that some of those changes are being unwound, and a good example of that is the parking requirements for developments. And I think while it's important to understand and acknowledge that, yes, we are in a housing crisis, as Councillor Pulford has suggested, they still need to be good quality dwellings that people feel good about living in. You know, our homes are everything. Our home is our castle, right? It's the most cliched thing you've ever heard, but it's actually quite true. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was being a little bit more brave than when I abstained and put my position on the table, even though I don't think my vote makes any difference at this stage. So I'll put it to the vote, Councillor Bolton's alternate motion. All those in favour? Against? And I declare that carried. And I'll now ask Alex to outline the next steps.
Thank you, Mayor. The Council has decided to issue a notice of refusal to grant a planning permit, subject to the grounds contained in the alternative recommendation. Following the issue of the refusal to grant a planning permit, both the applicant and the objector parties will receive a copy. The applicant will have 60 days to appeal Council's decision at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal.
Thank you, Alex. We just might find Councillor Irvin. Thank you. She hasn't gone home. Lucky it was raining. Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Welcome back. And I'll now move to 5.5, 74 Devon Road, Pascoe Vale Planning Permit Application, MPS 2025-528. And I will ask Eileen Chin, Planning Coordinator, to present the report. Thanks, Eileen. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councillors in gallery. This planning application relates to 74 Devon Road in Pascoe Vale. It is for the use of the land for a childcare centre, construction of buildings and works, to construct and display business identification signage, and also to remove canopy trees in the general residential zone. The site contains a single-storey brick house with a hipped roof. There is a single-width vehicle crossover on Devon Road that's shared with its neighbour. The site has a 23-metre frontage to Devon Road and an area of approximately 1,150 square metres. The surrounding area is mostly residential. It has a mix of housing, including single and double-storey homes, as well as newer multi-unit developments of up to 3 stories. There are also a number of non-residential uses nearby, which are shown on the screen. This includes a community hall, McDonald's, Pascoe Vale convenience restaurant, some industrially zoned land, Snell Grove Oak Park shops, and St. Francis de Sales Primary School. There is also a level crossing to the west of the site. The site enjoys good access to public transport, has a bus stop in front of it, and has Oak Park train station 450 metres away. For planning controls, the site is within the general residential zone. It's located next to land inside of the Oak Park Neighbourhood Activity Centre boundaries. The general residential zone allows for educational centres that serve local community needs in suitable locations. The site is located in an incremental change area, and the discretionary uses in residential zones policy applies. This supports childcare centres in residential areas where they are compatible with the surrounding neighbourhood. As for the proposal, this is for a childcare centre. There is a maximum of 100 children and 22 staff members. Operating hours are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday to Fridays. There is a new double crossover on Devon Road proposed, and a new 3-storey building. This includes, on the ground floor, a 22-space internal car park. It also has 4 bicycle parking spaces, and on the first and second floor we have children's rooms and various outdoor play areas. All car parking requirements have been met by the proposal, and there is a surplus of 11 spaces provided. There are also 2 business identification signs on Devon Road. These are not eliminated. The proposal will further retain a large existing tree at the frontage. The application was advertised to the public in the form of signs on Devon Road and direct mail to neighbouring properties. 10 objections have been received. There's been a range of concerns raised. These include traffic and cars queuing from the nearby level crossing, parking, and also the site's location in a residential area. A planning information and discussion meeting was held on the 5th of February this year. Following the meeting, there were certain agreements that were reached by the applicant, and this was to update the arborist report to include adjacent vegetation, also the restriction of right turns out of the site onto Devon Road, and the provision of a traffic management plan. Key considerations for the proposal is the location in a residential area, traffic impacts, and built form. In summary, it is recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued for the childcare centre, subject to some key conditions. These will require a sign at the vehicle exit of the site showing no right turn out of the site, the provision of a traffic management plan, and also larger parking spaces for bikes carrying children. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. We have no objectors who have indicated they'd like to speak, and we have no supporters who have indicated they'd like to speak. But are there any other people in attendance in the gallery tonight who'd like to address council on this application? So I'll now call upon the permit applicant or a representative of the permit applicant to make a submission, and I have Aidan Spence in person. Thanks, Aidan.
That was automatic.
Totally fine.
There's not much more. Thank you very much for hosting this evening. There's not much more we need to add beyond what Eileen's worked through. We've had some very productive conversations with council officers, the traffic engineers, to make sure that everything is as functional and comfortable from a design outcome as possible. Something worth highlighting is, and you would have seen the initial photography from the front of the site, is it's relatively steep and sloped up the frontage. That basement level that we're nominating at ground level is actually practically a subterranean level and just presents as a ground floor level to the street. to our neighbours on each east, west and north. It presents as effectively a double-storey form. We've tried to resolve it in a manner in which would be consistent with what a residential development outcome would be expected for the site by way of setbacks and heights, as well as shadow impacts and implications. We've got a comfortable oversupply of bicycle parking, and we've got an operator who's really excited to fill a community need in here. So thank you for your consideration.
Great, thanks so much. Are there any questions for the applicant? No. I'll ask councillors please for a motion. Councillor Theodosis, and a seconder, Councillor Irvin. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you. I attended the PID meeting where both residents and the applicant joined, and we had a really productive conversation about the issues and potential compromises as well. And what I heard from residents was that there was support for the childcare centre in principle, but they really wanted their concerns around the traffic on Devon Road addressed. And I do want to acknowledge those concerns regarding traffic along Devon Road, particularly with the level crossing there. I'm a local to that area and I use that road almost daily, and I completely agree that those boom gates are pretty problematic and can be down for almost 10 to 15 minutes during the day, especially with the V line going through, and can add to congestion in the area and can also be quite dangerous. So one of the suggestions was whether there could be a traffic management plan, and the applicant could also add a no right turn sign to direct people leaving the site away from the boom gates to help prevent from adding to congestion. And I'm really happy to see that this was agreeable by the applicant. There was also a discussion about no parking or stopping at the front, but I've been informed that the bus stop at the front of the sign means that there will be no on-street parking at the site's frontage, which is good. I do also just want to flag that I do intend on moving a notice of motion at the next council meeting that will be asking council to advocate to the state government for the removal of the level crossing on Devon Road and Gaffney Street. I do think it's something that the community needs and wants. But ultimately our community is growing, and I think having this childcare centre would be a great facility for young families in the area, and I feel as though it's important to support that. So yeah, I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Theodosis. Councillor Irvin, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I agree. I think this is a really good proposal, and it's nice to see this, in a neighbourhood. We constantly hear that we need more childcare places, so it's a really good development, and I think complements what else is there, the community centres, the school, that sort of thing. One thing I would add, I do notice that the car parking rate that was provided is a bit of an over-provision compared to what's in the planning scheme, and while that's what we're approving tonight, any changes to that would require a further planning amendment to the planning application. But I guess in the usage of the site, if it does end up being the case that you need more bike parking or a change in the layout to facilitate a better drop-off or things like that, I guess that it is always possible to revisit that layout and come to us with less car parking if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillor Bolton.
I want to propose an amendment which might be acceptable to add an extra point 1G, that the location of any rooftop or other mechanical plant equipment, including air conditioners, with any necessary acoustic screening.
Thank you. Is that appropriate to the mover? And yep, great. So that's been incorporated.
I might just speak to that,
Please
if that's
do.
okay.
Sure.
I'm just aware of another childcare centre which was directly abutting residences in Brunswick, where there was a big issue of noisy rooftop services, and that's why I'm moving this, because there's a need for acoustic screening around these if it's abutting a residence.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there a councillor that would like to speak against this proposal? No. Then I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried unanimously. And I'll ask Eileen to outline the next steps, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The Council has decided to issue a Notice of Decision to grant a planning permit for the use of land for a childcare centre, construction of buildings and works, construct and display business identification signage, and to remove canopy trees in the general residential zone, subject to the conditions contained within the alternative recommendation. Following the issue of the notice of decision, both the applicant and all objector parties will receive a copy of the notice of decision to grant a planning permit. Objectors will then have 28 days to appeal council's decision at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. In the event that no appeal is lodged at VCAT, a planning permit will be issued. If a planning permit is issued, the applicant has 60 days from date of issue of the notice of decision to appeal any conditions on the permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll move to 5.3, 932 Sydney Road, Coburg North, planning application MPS 2025-599. And I'll ask if any councillors have a conflict of interest to declare. Nope. And now I'll ask Ned Dumaresque, the Commercial Priority Senior Urban Planner, to present the report, please. Thanks, Ned.
Good evening, councillors and gallery. The application before council seeks permission to use and develop the land at 932 Sydney Road in Coburg North for the purposes of a warehouse, office, convenience restaurants, food and drink premises, store, a service station, and to remove vegetation, construct and display signage, and to alter access to a road and a transport to zone. The application is at its decision-making stage. As visible from the map on the left, the site is located on the eastern side of Sydney Road, south of Keaty Street and west of Trelaw Street. The site is approximately 14,968 square metres in size and contains an existing car sales and warehouse business, as well as a large vacant section of land. The site is within the Industrial 3 zone and is identified within the core industry and employment area within the Merri-bek Industrial Land Strategy. The land is also included within the local significant industrial precinct in the state government's Melbourne Industrial and Commercial Land Use Plan. The proposal is split up into two precincts, being the western and eastern sections of the property. The western precinct contains three 24/7 convenience restaurants, which include a McDonald's, El Jana's and Guzman Gomez. A 7-Eleven service station is also centrally proposed. The precinct is accessed by both Keaty Street and Sydney Road. The eastern precinct is proposed to contain 25 warehouses, 5 office buildings, a basement storage facility, and access is provided on Keaty Street and Trelaw Street. Other works include the removal of trees and the construction and display of signage. To date, council has received 149 objections, which primarily raise concern to the following matters: traffic congestion and impact to local road network, impacts on pedestrian and cyclist safety on Keaty Street, inadequate car parking, waste management, litter and pollution effects on the local environment, including Merri Creek, over-concentration of service stations, impact from multiple convenience restaurants and health implications from fast food, amenity impacts, including the hours of operation, odour, antisocial behaviour, light and noise, the domination of pylon signage, and that land should alternatively be used for housing or rezoned. A planning and information discussion meeting was held on the 3rd of March. Following the meeting, the applicant agreed to conditions to be imposed should a permit be issued, requiring the following specialist reports. That includes an acoustic report, an odour management report, a waste management report, a patron and venue management report, a lighting impact assessment and management plan. A litter patrol was also agreed to, which will be undertaken at least once a day by the operator of each convenience restaurant and covers public roads, reserves within a 100-metre radius of the site and Keaty Street. Key considerations include the site's appropriate location within an industrial 3 zone, a core industry employment area and adjacent to Sydney Road. The car parking and bicycle spaces meet or exceed the planning scheme requirements. Buildings and works being acceptable. Tree removal is supportable subject to costs of removal, replacement and amenity values of street trees being paid to council. Off-site amenity impacts can be adequately addressed via conditions. Traffic and impact on local roads can be supported subject to public works plan conditions, and signage is appropriate subject to conditions. It is recommended that a notice of decision to grant a planning permit be issued subject to key conditions which require conditions requiring specialist reports to manage noise, odour, waste and light impacts, a condition requiring a daily litter patrol by each operator of the convenience restaurants, a public works plan requiring contribution of a 1.5 metre wide corridor of land along the northern property boundary and delivery of a protected bicycle lane and associated infrastructure works, and conditions regulating the use and operation of the convenience restaurants, warehouses and office buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned. So we have, the number I've got here is 25, but I'll just say several objectors who've indicated they'd like to speak. And what I will do is I will invite Christopher Orchard, who is speaking in person, and allow Christopher 10 minutes to introduce the objections as he's speaking on behalf of several people. And then I will allow 3 minutes for each other speaker. And the final speaker, Helen Metzger, will be allowed to take the lectern for 10 minutes to conclude, as Helen is also speaking on behalf of several people. So Christopher Orchard, if you're here, could you approach the lectern, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councillors and gallery. I've got just a one-page leaflet, if I can hand it around.
Sure.
The first page of this leaflet that you'll look at is from the traffic report provided by the applicant. It's a pedestrian radius for the development and gives you an idea of what the applicant's idea is of how far people will be walking from this site. As you can see, the orange is the edge of the site, but I'll wait for it to probably get all the way around before I start talking to it in detail to everybody. And I start with this to give the councillors an idea of what the impact will actually be. Now, one of the conditions summarised by the planning officer just then was a 100-metre radius to collect litter from this development. As all of you will see, the pedestrian radius far exceeds 100 metres. It goes up and down the Merri Creek corridor, a vulnerable and important environmental area. And if councillors will flip to the other side of that leaflet, please. Councillors will see the Kearney Street line, and Councillor Bolt, if I could just number 23 in the middle of the map. This is a document from the Streets for People project passed by Merri-bek City Council. It's a document that sets out the Kearney Street as a targeted area to improve the livability and accessibility of the streets in the area. The reason I draw this to your attention at the outset is if the councillors cast their eyes north of that street and south, what we'll see is the only crossing that's available on Sydney Road that's been identified. I've drawn your attention to these documents because I want you to understand the importance of the locality of this development and why what you'll hear over the next hour or so is of such importance to the community. The community's main concerns were listed in a slide or two ago, but in summary, they are impacts on traffic along Kearney Street, in particular the disruption and frankly the destruction of the cycle route that's used consistently by families going to and from, for example, Newlands Primary School, or commuting to and from the Merri Creek bike path to the Upfield bike path just near my house. The impact of increased traffic in the area by way of how the proposal has been designed. I don't know if we could get a map up again of the actual site, but the way that the site has been designed, councillor, is that the only entrance for northbound traffic into the site is not to turn right from Sydney Road across traffic into the centre, traffic must go north and turn right at Kearney Street, come into Kearney Street, turn right again, or again, there being two crossovers proposed, one for the warehouses and one for the fast foods. What this does is turn Kearney Street essentially into an arterial road for these fast food conglomerates, the petrol station, and for the warehouses at the back of the development. Those are the main considerations, in addition to things that you'll hear about biodiversity and about the economic impact of this development. Of particular importance in the report prepared by Council, and I don't wish to make criticisms of the Council officers, they're very busy, I understand that. They've taken on good faith a lot of what has been put to them by way of submissions by the applicant. One of them was a so-called employment report that put forward to everybody in this room the numbers of jobs that can be expected from the development of this site. There are two fundamental issues with that report. I've drawn Council's attention to it in my own submissions, and others will speak to it in depth. But in essence, what's happened is data from 1996 and 7 has been used to extrapolate jobs data for the contemporary space for fast food outlets. That data from the national accounts is available annually. Data from 30 years ago has been used in this report as the first and only citation to an external document to justify the numbers. In my submission, they're greatly exaggerated and shouldn't be accepted. And the reason I make such a big deal of that is because it's the only thing at the header of the report prepared by the Planning Committee, and indeed by the lobbyist and applicant, that benefits the community. Employment is what is said to be the core aspect of why this development should go ahead. Now, what you'll probably hear from the lobbyist later, and it'll be contradicted by a lot of what's said here, the community does not want fast food outlets dropped like a bomb into the middle of the community without any consultation at all. And I've noted, sitting there patiently for my turn to speak, what seems to be quite a bit more engagement between the other applicants tonight and our own community. There was no back and forward with us and the applicant. There has been no attempt to change in any meaningful way the way that the development's been laid out. We've got some conditions proposed, but for the reasons that you'll hear tonight, none of them are sufficient to fix what essentially is a health-destroying, environment-destroying, street-destroying, and frankly, economically unviable application. One or two more points on the economic issue. It should not be accepted by Council that the jobs that are proposed in this application are anything other than transient, low-paid jobs that people cannot build lives around. They do not support a growing community, they do not support a healthy lifestyle, and they do not support the people who will live immediately adjacent to them. You might also hear from the lobbyists who will speak later, well, these things can't be taken into account under the planning scheme. Wrong. Section 65 of the planning scheme plainly allows you to take into account the human health impacts of what these developments represent. You might hear other arguments, that it's in an industrial zone, a core industrial precinct. Well, for the reasons that I've given to you, the jobs that will be generated are low quality, transient, and in fact what the application will do, and you'll hear more about this from other people who are better trained in it than me, is lock out good jobs for a good portion of the next 30 years. There will not be useful industry, jobs or community on this land. It'll be draining on the community and not productive in any way. You'll hear from a number of people in the community tonight. Of course, people who have lived here for many years, people who have lived here only for a little while, but you'll also hear from experts. You'll hear from people who are experts in traffic management, waste disposal. You'll hear from people who are experts on the environment. You'll hear from doctors. You'll hear from the community that lives around this project. Now, the council and and our submitters to the council might not be able to draw your attention legalistically to each one of the grounds for refusal. But if the council harks back a little bit, you had an application, I believe it was at the last council meeting, planning meeting, for a Hungry Jackson Glenroy. Some of you I can see nodding that can remember that. You rejected it, and for good reason. This project represents essentially what that project represented, but magnified exponentially by way of detriment to the community, on the health of our municipality, and on the health of our people. You'll hear from people who will talk about why it is that to approve this application would represent not only an inconsistency with Council's previous decision about how these fast food venues are approved, but also how it is that the Council could find itself in a situation where, and respectfully I say, in that case we had a report saying it wasn't appropriate, in this case we do, for the reasons that you'll also hear tonight. In addition to the reasons why the planning application shouldn't be approved, you'll hear reasons why the report from Council, the Council officers themselves, as I alluded to at the beginning, may have been flawed from the get-go, but not because necessarily of the way that the Council planners themselves approach the task, but because of the way the data in the application has been put to you. So when you're considering this and reviewing it, I'd implore you to look closely at those things and listen carefully to the people who have put a lot of time and effort into thinking about how to help you tonight come to the correct decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. I'll now ask, I believe, Mims Little, are you coming to come and speak? Oh, and Henry. They weren't. They weren't. Take your time, but you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, and good evening, councillors. My name is Amelia Little. I live on Keady Street with my family and my younger brother. I am worried about the development that is planned for the top of Keady Street. The traffic at the intersection between Keady Street and Sydney Road is very scary. On every trip to Aldi, to the train station, to drop my brother off at daycare when he went there, or to go for a bike ride along the upfield bike path, I would always see cars running, red lights and driving in a dangerous way. It made me very nervous to cross at that set of traffic lights. This petrol station and all the fast food shops are going to increase the traffic on Keady Street to levels that will make the intersection even more dangerous. I want to ask the councillors what they are going to do to ensure the safety and well-being of the people and the lots of kids that use that intersection on a daily basis. Will you support an amendment to put a right-hand turn lane on Keady Street? Will you support an amendment to install a red light camera on this intersection? Will you support an amendment to install a speed camera on this intersection? Without these things being installed, I am really worried that someone, possibly a child, but most certainly one of my neighbours, is going to get seriously hurt or killed by the increase in traffic that this development will create. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Well done. Thank you. The next person I have on my list is Joe Van Twest Farmer, who is here in person. Thanks, Joe. All right. And after Joe will be Stephen Allen and Lucille Allen. Hi, Joe.
Sorry, it was a long trek from
Totally
that side
fine.
of the room. Hi, everyone. My name is Jo Van Fast Farmer. I'm a local resident and I am here representing my fellow bike riders of this area of Coburg North, stretching into Faulkner. I ride Keady Street on a daily basis. I rode along it to get here tonight. I'm not looking forward to riding home along it in the rain. Keady Street is identified as a Streets for People cycling street. I can assume it was identified as such because it's the perfect street to be a cycling street. It helps people westbound to access Aldi, the Merlinston shops, the station, and the Upfield bike path. And eastbound, many parents use it to access Newlands Primary School, various of the Coburg primary schools, the Merri Creek bike path, and Parker Reserve for community sports. Keady Street is currently the only safe cycling crossing point for kilometres in either direction. As it stands, it's not a particularly safe crossing at all, as we've just heard. But at least Keady Street itself and the feeder points from Bakers along Gould are quiet, safe streets to ride on. And for this reason, many local cyclists opt to use this route, and this development will fundamentally change the nature of that. Keady Street itself will see an astronomical increase in street traffic, particularly of drivers who aren't paying any attention because they've just left picking up their fast food or they're reprogramming their GPS. I highly doubt a driver exiting the development at Keady Street will be looking for local cyclists in the way that many locals have become accustomed to doing in that area. Gould, Treloar will become rat runs as people seek to find other ways of exiting the site inevitably. Because there's a lot of dead-end streets that way, people will be kind of moving around into those streets that are currently safe to ride on. Parker Reserve has a road into it, which is a one-way road with a car park at the end. We also expect that that will see an increase in traffic as people go and find somewhere to sit and eat their food. And cars travelling southbound, as we've just heard, will run the red light because they won't be focusing on the fact that there's a red light there. They'll be focusing on the fact that they're about to top up their car or get some food. The proposed amendment of adding a 1.5 metre protected bike lane does little to address these concerns. The protected bike lane is meaningless when traffic is having to turn across that protected bike lane and won't be looking for bikes travelling at speed towards that turn. It also, the amendments there, or the recommendations, do absolutely nothing to address the increase in traffic on the streets that I've mentioned, Gould, Treloar, Spry, etc., and the road into Parker Reserve. Without a green turning arrow onto Sydney Road, which was not part of the recommendations from the Department of Transport, that's going to lead to further distraction, frustration, and danger for vulnerable road users. And the red light running, as was discussed, hasn't been addressed at all. As residents, we've long said that this stretch of Sydney Road is an accident waiting to happen. I don't think I'm being melodramatic in saying that this development makes a cyclist death or serious injury inevitable, and it saddens me to know that it's going to be me or one of my neighbours.
Oh, thank you, Jo. Stephen Allen and Lucille Allen. And after that, Drew Roberts is on my list. And I just want to double check, because the councillor has asked me, did Henry want to speak as well? He will. Okay, so maybe if Henry will come after Drew. Hello, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Stephen Allen. I live in McCoy Street. McCoy Street, even though it's called a street, it is a court. We have 9 houses. If we add up the residency of all the people living there, it's over 300 years. So we've got a little bit of skin in the game. We have a demographic of some young families there now with 5 children under the age of 10. We've got 86-year-olds down to 40, and I'm 69. Now, I've lived in North Coburg all my life. I was in the police force for 43 years. I worked in Merri-bek for over 30 years. The intersection of Keady Street and Sydney Road is by far one of the most dangerous intersections I've ever seen. When I was working, it was like shooting ducks on a pond. Cars going through that red light heading north and south in Sydney Road, very dangerous. Now, the car parking spaces that have been allocated to the site, 49, take off 5. They're for electric charge vehicles. If you add up the potential of the employees working across those 3 restaurants, you're looking at a minimum of 15 a shift. So where are they going to park their cars? Now, we'll do a compare the pair. You're all aware of Aljana in Camberfield, McDonald's in Camberfield, and Guzman y Gomez in Camberfield. They are within a 150-metre walking radius. Across the three sites, you've got 104 parking spaces. McDonald's in Pascoe Vale, 38. It just doesn't add up. We will have overspill into the side streets, people trying to find parking places. If they want to park in the car park at Aldi, there's 110 spaces there. And then you're going to encourage people to be crossing Sydney Road. Now, it flies in the face of Victoria Police road safety strategy, where we're trying to reduce pedestrian injuries and deaths. You're causing conflict where you're going to have cars and pedestrians engaging all the time. People are going to park down in Keedy Street, they're going to walk up to the precinct, the western end, to get their food or whatever, and then have to walk back. Now, I've mentioned in my objections a few other things other than that, the noise, the smells, all of those sort of things. We currently experience overspill because we've got a premises directly opposite, 932, which is a graveyard music studio. They have 20 parking spaces there. We have overspill already into our street. So we don't want that. I understand we have a housing crisis in this state. We don't have a fast food or petrol station crisis. Now, you've let the genie out of the bottle once, and I'm talking about the graveyard music studio. It is within a residential zone. It should never have been approved, but it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Lucille, I believe you're speaking on behalf of Graham Alabaster.
And myself
And
as
yourself,
well,
yeah.
Not
No,
him though,
I get
because
that.
we're married.
Yeah.
So, thank you for having me. I've lived and raised a family in our home for over 48 years, and as Steve said, for almost 70. I'm objecting to the planning application on the following grounds: impact on environment, flora and fauna, and the residents of the city of Merri-bek. In summary, the Merri-bek Nature Plan Executive Summary states, Merri-bek will have a more diverse, connected and resilient natural environment where Indigenous plants and animals thrive in a challenging and changing environment. Through fostering strong partnership, Council supports its community to treasure the local environment by providing opportunities to discover, connect and care for nature. And that's a Council statement. I have spoken with Alex, who is the Manager of Open Spaces, Design and Development on a few occasions, and also this morning in reference to McGregor-Dawson Reserve, the Nature Understory project, which is a part of Melbourne University research trial, titled Trial of Planting a Native Understory and Wildflower Meadow. The plants are endemic to Coburg North and may include a few other native species. There is amongst several other beautiful eucalypti, a magnificent and extremely old river gum tree in this reserve. A few of us have had a meeting in that reserve and it is huge. It is the most magnificent species of tree. Any disturbances, i.e. pollution, alteration of ground level and construction will put pressure on a delicate environment. Parker Reserve. The southwestern corner of the park is part of the No Mowing Biodiversity Study, which is also part of the Nature Plan. In the southern end of Parker Reserve, we have quite a few imposing stands of eucalypti, which are also flowering species. These stands have also trees that are dying or dead, and the council arborist has pruned them for nesting birds. This area is a breeding and feeding ground for large flocks of several Australian parrot species, tawny frogmouth, bats, kookaburra, currawong, and several species of honey eaters like the noisy miner. We also have a large Australian orb spiders, snakes, numerous insects, and more importantly, bees. We have had kangaroos sighted in McCoy Street, Trelaw Street, and Spry Street, and any disturbances to either of these reserves can and will have dire consequences of flora and fauna. Let us please protect these specific areas whilst in their infancy and help add to the beautiful green city we live in. The benefits to our generation and future generations of flora and fauna and people will and should be our legacy. Thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of us the residents of Merri-bek. So that was from me. And then on behalf of Graham. So I'm appalled at the lack of care shown by the planners towards the residents in the general area of the 2 precincts contained in the planning application. There already is a huge impact on McCoy Street with the following. Anzac Lodge Care staff car park located at the end of McCoy Street. Staff work 3 shifts, morning, afternoon and night. Morning shift takes approximately from 6 to 9 in the morning, and the staff entering in and exiting the car park. Then between 2 and 3:30, and again about 5 p.m. when the office staff leave, and then between 9 and 10:30 for the next shift. Overflow of said parking in McCoy Street, contrary to the planning permit issued by the council. We have 2 residents over the age of 80, 4 toddlers under the age of 3, a primary school child, several in their 60s and 70s, 4 in the 30 to 50 bracket. There are also 12 grandchildren that visit the site on a regular basis. McCoy Street is a narrow street with 9 houses and has right of way to park or reserve. Families from the area access via bikes and on foot to train, tram, bus, schools, kindergartens and childminding centres. Although council put restrictions of no deliveries via McCoy Street, they do deliveries. Lights flashing into bedrooms, especially in my bedroom because it's in direct line of the exit. Road traffic noise, litter, bright sensor lights, loud music from car radios, staff chatter, car doors opening and banging. I counted 16 yesterday morning. And that was at 6. As McCoy Street is quite narrow, the council garbage refuse trucks have to reverse down the street to make pickups. So they drive in down Keady Street, reverse into McCoy Street. They've asked us to line all our bins on one side. The Graveyard Music Studio, located in Sydney Road, and the 4 businesses that are subject to space on this site, Food Trucks by 2, Malaysian Cafe and a Butter Mama Bakery, all back onto their houses in McCoy Street. I've actually witnessed a lot of this and I've walked the perimeter. So the issues from this site is overflow of parking and rubbish from food trucks, unknown strangers in the street, aggressive motorists vying for parking, vehicles parking illegally on nature strips, overhanging driveways and footpaths, and the bowl of the street, which is illegal. Oil spill from one of the food trucks, which was reported by several concerned residents, and including twice to the council myself, which they closed one of the incidents saying that they'd cleaned it up and they hadn't. Noise pollution in the evenings and nights. The impact of additional traffic will be extreme in our little street. Thank you for your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Drew, and then Henry's coming in. I'm just conscious of the fact that there are lots and lots of speakers and we have about half an hour, so maybe find 10 of you so that Helen can take her 10 minutes to finish. Thanks, Drew.
Councillor Boot, I'm aware that 2 people allocated their time to me, Marissa Pintado and Erin Van Graan. Has that been noted? So
well, it's up to you if you want to take the 9 minutes because there's 10 blocks of 3 minutes
I won't
left.
take the full 9 minutes.
Sure, thanks, Drew.
So my name's Drew Roberts. I'm a local from Coburg North. There is no precedent for a 24/7 food outlet in Merri-bek at this scale. The only other examples of this kind of mega development are on freeways and major highways. But we are a community, a neighbourhood. We're not a drive-through. We're not a truck stop. This small industrially zoned pocket, despite being on Sydney Road, is set within a quiet residential area near the creek, childcare centre, aged care centre, parklands, sports clubs, a key bike route and close to public transport. Vulnerable road users would all need to contend with a huge increase in vehicle numbers on Sydney Road and on surrounding residential streets. It would fundamentally change the area and degrade the neighbourhood on a number of levels. It would not, as stated in the Victorian planning provisions, contribute to a road system to achieve safe, efficient and sustainable networks, but it would increase the social and economic cost of road trauma by introducing increased risk in an area already known to be incredibly dangerous. The Proposed development sits right in the middle of one of the most dangerous roads in Merri-bek, Sydney Road, Coburg North, which holds the unfortunate record of having the most collisions per kilometre in Merri-bek, according to DTP data. It saw 217 collisions and 77 fatal and serious injuries over a 12-year period. The Livable Sydney Road group, which I'm a member of, had a state petition recently sponsored by Anthony Cianflone, received over 500 signatures to demand road safety improvements in the area, but there's no word of any safety infrastructure updates that will be implemented yet, and not at all in this particular spot. Sadly, there have been 6 major incidents just in the last few weeks that have been noted on our Facebook page. Please check it out. A local in our group recently posted how her daughter was hit at the intersection of Sydney and Keady Street by a vehicle running a red light. This is too common a story near this site, and just noting it's 100 metres or so from a childcare centre. So why is this particular area so dangerous? It's a combination of inappropriate speed limits, a lack of traffic calming measures, speed cameras, red light cameras, a lack of adequate signalling for road users and right-hand turn arrows. But most importantly, I think, it's a very narrow part of Sydney Road that has to contend with buses, on-street parking, cars making right-hand turns, and cars weaving in and out of what is often single-lane traffic. So that's our daily reality. It's a mess. We're scared to let our families out and about just to go to the local shops. We need it to be safer. We want it to be safer, but this development would increase the risk of accidents. Keep in mind, the applicant's traffic survey is limited. It does not present peak use times of fast food outlets. It does not consider the overlapping nature of multiple 24/7 outlets, and the survey is done at a quieter time of year in winter. So keep in mind, the shockingly high numbers of vehicles that are stated are likely underestimated. So the traffic travelling southbound on Sydney Road will turn left into the site, into the proposed site. There's no left-hand turn slip lane, as there is on Aldi on the other side of the road, to allow safe entry, which at this volume would create sudden slowing and congestion and further high-speed weaving through the traffic, the most common cause of accidents in this strip. According to the Road Management Act 2004, developments must not interfere with safe and efficient operation of the road. And vehicles travelling northbound on Sydney Road will have no other option but to turn right into Keady Street, as we've heard, a very quiet and narrow street, and with no right-hand turn arrow. I believe that was a suggested amendment that was denied by the Department of Transport and Planning, but it also confirms that this is a high-risk area. Why was that denied? The increase of daily peak hour traffic going into Keady will be from 11 vehicles to 192, a 17-fold increase. The expected queues on Sydney Road will be huge, and yet in this narrow part of the road, congestion will ensue, reaching back perhaps towards Bakers, the most dangerous intersection in Merri-bek. Keady Street, entrances and exits. The Keady Street will be expected to receive 2,800 cars per day, 2,800, or 93% of the 3,000 maximum vehicle daily limit. This leaves no room for new growth, and this has not been addressed. How will planners ensure that the maximum capacity is not exceeded in the future? It's likely to. It's a growth area. Residential streets, according to the state government policy, are places. Their primary function is not for movement. Keep in mind, Keady Street is a 300-metre dead-end street, so how long would that queue be? As others have said, the only option is for cars to rat run around Spry Street, Golleen Street, Bakers Road. But these streets, and this is important, we're talking about a series of interconnected dead-end streets, and the only way back out is onto this most treacherous stretch of Sydney Road. There's no other way out. How would the bus navigate this traffic? There is a bus line in this area too. It already struggles. How would we navigate the medium ridge service vehicles on Keady Street? And they're expected to enter on Keady Street as well, not to mention on the site where there's barely enough room for turning circles for heavy vehicles. Cars on Keady Street would see a 585% increase in daily peak hour traffic, according to the application. How would homeowners in Keady and McCoy Court, just opposite and beyond, how would they get in and out of their driveways at peak times? The potential increased volume and this conflict between vehicles and vulnerable road users is in direct contradiction with the Merri-bek Streets for People plan, as others have noted. Keedy Street is a key route for cyclists. The applicant also fails to mention the impact of 24/7 traffic on residential streets that would typically have close to 0 vehicles many nights of the week. What about late night noise? And what about our right to quiet enjoyment?
If you can wrap it up, that would be good.
Yes. The suggested amendment re bike lanes is a welcome idea, but even with the road widening to make this happen, the reality is it is too narrow to accept this volume of traffic. The bike lane does nothing to address that. It creates a busy crossover for vulnerable road users and with no right-hand turn arrows to improve safety, and it creates a barrier to active transport.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, we'll hear from Henry very quickly, and then I suggest that you organise yourselves so that people who are not talking about transport present, because I think we've heard quite a bit about the roads and there'd be other cases to put. You got it, Henry? Let's go, buddy. Big voice.
Hi, my name's Henry. And why do you not like it? You don't like it because it is dangerous for us school kids, and the traffic is scary, and there'll be lots of cars running red lights.
Henry, would you like to hear from the rest of the speakers on your behalf? Would that be good?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
buddy. Thanks for coming in. You're very brave. We'll see you again. So I've got Megan, Nadine, Morgan, and just as I suggested, I think that other issues away from the traffic-related stuff would be valuable to hear about. Sure, thank you. And your name?
Megan Burke.
Thank you, Megan.
So I'm a resident on Trelaw Street, which faces directly onto this proposed development. Today I'm speaking as a resident and a dietitian, and for my husband as a resident and an economist. As a resident of Trelaw Street, obviously I'm concerned about the safety with the rat running that people have talked about. The other thing that's important to mention is, despite the developer's claims that the warehouses will be open from 7 till 7, there is storage. This basement storage facility will have 24/7 access onto Keedy Street, which is a storage facility means large cars and trucks on this really quiet suburban street of 7 houses, potentially at all hours. And this appears to have been overlooked completely in the developer's claims, and no information about traffic impact has been there. I'll summarise my other bit in the interest of time. As a dietitian, I'm really worried about the health of my community by the addition of 3 fast food outlets and a convenience store. While lots of people talk about personal responsibility in food choices, this is a public health issue. I won't go into the details I have. There is so much evidence that creation of food swamp, as opposed to food deserts, so food swamp is where there's a high concentration of unhealthy food choices, increases BMI. And we know that there is a well-known link between BMI and negative health outcomes, including heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, our 3 biggest killers. This link is so well understood by governments across the board. The Victorian government's inquiry into food security last year even recommended a change in the planning law to allow local governments to consider current fast food outlet density in an area before approving them. I'll be now reading my husband's statement, so excuse the change in stuff. I'm a professional macroeconomist with over 2 decades of experience in private sector economic analysis. As a result, I was interested to see the methodology used to support the project's estimates of employment, including the benefits that would spill over as a result of the increase in activity in development. The data used to create these forecasts was from the ABS 1996 to 97 Australian National Accounts Input-Output tables. For background, these tables map the interdependencies of different industries across the economy. The most recently available versions reference says the 2022-2023 financial year, although he told me today the new one was released today. I do not believe that the choice to use a data set that's over 25 years old was an accident. This data set is so old it is not even available on the ABS website. The reason to do so is most likely to artificially inflate the employment forecast to overstate the benefits of the project to the council to encourage its approval. There has been a substantial shift in the labour intensity of key industries that underpin this project, namely food service, transport and logistics. In the case of fast food establishments, it is now commonplace to order either through touchscreen kiosks or to order via mobile apps, while payments are far less likely to be made by cash than was the case in 1996-97, meaning there are fewer people employed to provide direct service to customers. Similarly, fast food kitchens have also become increasingly automated over time, reducing the number of kitchen staff required to produce food for customers. The implementation of digital technologies and robotics within the transports and logistics sectors has lowered the labour intensity to this sector, which is another key industry for this development, both from direct demand for the warehousing section and supplying fast food and fuel establishments. Technological developments in the mid-1990s have transformed this industry, meaning that purported spillover benefits to employment are far smaller than those estimated using the 25-year-old data set. The data set used to create these forecasts was originated at the dawn of the digital revolution, a time in which mobile phones were not widespread in the community and 10 years before the first smartphone. A huge boost to Australia's overall productivity from the period of technological change up to the early 2000s is not captured by this data, and as a result, it would provide you, the council, with a completely incorrect assessment of how significant the employment gains of this project would be.
Thank you. So I have Nadine, Morgan, Rohan, Dr. Isabella Stewart. I'm just assuming that you're working out who's coming in and, yeah. Come on in. As what? Oh, no, there's one. Thank you. If we could just hear your name.
Hello everyone, my name is Morgan Kingsmill.
Thank you.
I'm a resident on Spry Street and have been there since 2018. I'd like to use my time to speak about the impact this development will have on the much loved and well utilised Parker Reserve. The park is home to several sporting clubs, formal and informal. People come to walk their dogs in the designated off-lead area. Children come to use the playground. It's used by residents for exercise and as a place to get together, and people of all abilities come to just sit in nature. There is only one car park, and it sits in the centre of the park, and it's only accessible via a shared walkway, or shared driveway, off Keady Street. Cars, people on bikes, people pushing prams, people using mobility aids all have to use this road to access the park. I'm concerned that the park will become a secondary parking site for staff of the warehouses and the fast food outlets, and as a short stay car park for those wanting to eat their takeaway meals. It will increase the amount of traffic travelling through the park as cars enter and exit, and poses a significant risk. I worry for my children and all the children who will need to navigate a congested Keady Street and then share a busy road to get to the playground. As has already been highlighted, we are likely to see an increase in litter at the park. The park is not within the proposed litter patrol area, and so the burden of this rubbish is going to fall directly onto the local residents and park users. It will fall to Merri-bek Council, who will have to address overflowing bins, and ultimately the burden is going to fall on Merri Creek, which sits next to the park and is where the rubbish will eventually end up. I am concerned about the risk of crime, antisocial behaviour and loitering in the park, especially given the proposed operating hours of the fast food venues. A 24-hour outlet will attract late-night crowds to an otherwise very quiet residential area. The application suggests outlet security will move loitering or troublesome groups from their own premises, and the park, just around the corner, becomes an obvious hangout spot with real consequences for the surrounding residents. I find it painfully unfair that the burden of this development is going to fall on the community who live in and love this area. I urge you to please vote to refuse this development. If it is passed, as well as addressing the other serious concerns raised here tonight, please consider the operating hours, and to minimise the amount of traffic on the creek end of Keady Street and in the residential back streets in general, I suggest, can we make a no right turn for cars exiting onto Keady Street from the Western Precinct? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Morgan. So did you want to put a motion that, yeah. So, yeah, thank you. So I'll ask for a vote to put this to the vote, that the motion be put. All those in favour? Against? Sorry, can I see that again? All those in favour? For, against? And that's lost on the casting vote of the Mayor. So we'll keep going. Yep, come in. Yeah. So if I can hear from someone on Spry Street after, you're from Spry Street, thank you.
Yes, Sue, I'll speak to that. On the councillor's recommendation, we are trying to fit to time. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. My name is Ben. I'm a resident of Spry Street. I'm an engineer and I speak in opposition. My primary concern is the noise pollution from the proposal will impact the amenity of surrounding homes on the southern aspect, and there will be no nightly reprieve due to 24/7 operations. The Merri-bek planning scheme recognises noise pollution and, importantly, its health impacts. The planner's report recognises the west-to-east buffer by the warehouses to Treloar Street, but makes no evaluation of the southern side situation towards Spry. Eljana, the southernmost food outlet, will have its ordering speakerphones located 22 metres from the nearest residence, separated by nothing more than suburban fences. Drive-through speakerphones are typically set at high volume and will be in chorus with the patrons shouting into them. Idling, accelerating and braking vehicles will be heard on a background of commercial refrigeration and other machinery. There is no doubt that this noise will be clearly audible from 22 metres away. Also 22 metres away will be the new basement driveway. It includes 2 access doors, likely of metal construction. It's very common for basement doors to eventually generate significant metal and metal screeching, and not to sound sour, but for a basement that is primarily extra commercial space, not parking. Meanwhile, the applicant seeks a reduction in the car parking requirement. These reasonably expected and intrusive noise sources will be a consequence of the proposal. Simply, the noise sources and their victims should have controls addressing them before seeking approval. The application has nothing more than a 1.8 metre tall suburban fencing on the southern aspect. Options exist to rectify this. Relocating the drive-through to the north side of the Eljana building, thereby removing the noise into the main car park, is one. Then the building itself would act as a noise buffer. There is a local example of this at the McDonald's in Heidelberg. At a minimum, I would expect the current proposal's arrangement to be amended to include engineered acoustic treatments, such as enclosing the length of the drive-through or installing high and thick acoustic fencing along the southern aspect. A local example of this is at the McDonald's on the corner of Bell and Sussex Streets. Peak demand for fast food in this area occurs late at night, after 9 p.m, when the residents will be trying to sleep. Many outlets close their dining rooms overnight for safety reasons, further directing all customers through the drive-through, compounding this issue. A 24/7 operation provides no respite from the noise. It's an unacceptable impact. The current application and the assessment of it fails to adequately recognise the increase of noise to the south and the impacts to the amenity of nearby homes, an unacceptable impact. I urge the councillors to reject the proposal. Thank you.
Thanks so much. If we could just hear your name.
Yeah. My name's Isabella Stewart.
Thank you, Isabella.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Isabella Stewart and I'm a local Spry Street resident. I'm also a medical doctor currently practicing in Melbourne and I'm undertaking further training in public health. Whilst I have a number of concerns regarding this proposed development, I will focus on 2 areas of significant public health importance. They are road safety and healthy food environments. I appreciate that we've heard a lot about road safety, so I'm going to say one sentence and I'll talk about healthy food.
Yeah, and we've heard a fair bit about that as well, and you're losing the room, so you need to be succinct, just so that people who haven't spoken
can do so. Yep.
Can do
okay.
so. Thank you.
I will keep it very brief.
Thank you so much.
The likelihood of impatient drivers speeding through our quiet streets is not hypothetical. It's a predictable and preventable outcome of poor traffic planning. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Thank you.
Now, briefly on healthy food environments. I would like to reference the Public Health and Wellbeing Act and that local councils must, and I quote, seek to protect, improve and promote public health and wellbeing within the municipal district by creating an environment that supports health of the local community. Merri-bek Council's own health and wellbeing profile highlights this and states the council's position to work towards improving healthy food options and influencing healthy food choices in our local area. That's all I'm going to say to keep it brief, and I'll let someone else talk.
Thank you so much. If there's anybody out there that has got something to mention that hasn't been raised at all, that would be really valuable. Hello.
Good evening. My name's Mark Woodward. I live in Fawkner, about 1.7 kilometres from the site. Within 5 kilometres of the site, there is already more than 22 fast chain food outlets operating across 10 brands, which I won't list all of them, but safe to say that it includes 5 McDonald's. The local fast food market is not underserved, it is saturated, and there is no demonstrated community need for this development. But what exists right now, immediately adjacent to this site, are businesses like Hungry La, Butter Mama, the Graveyard Bar, and several, over 50 locally owned, operated businesses and ventures in the area. And they're exactly the kinds of businesses that Merri-bek's own food system strategy says it wants to nurture. Local enterprises, culturally appropriate food, a strong local food economy. But these are exactly the kinds of businesses that a development like this is going to decimate. Customers who might otherwise stop to get out of their car and spend time and money at a local venture will instead queue through a drive-through and leave. The foot traffic that sustains a small independent business evaporates when the alternative is a multinational chain that never closes. The site represents a genuine opportunity, and this community would welcome something that reflects its character and ambitions. Diverse, I'm going to skip ahead, precedents for developments that like Morris Moore, built on the former Philip Morris factory site in Moorabbin, Coburg's own Pentridge. These demonstrate what is possible when developers commit to a genuinely diverse tenancy mix. Independent dining, community spaces, workspaces, entertainment that bring people into an area and keep them there, creating lasting economic and social value. That is the standard that this community deserves, and it is what we should demand. Another cluster of drive-through fast food chains is not a destination. It is an unimaginative development cynically designed so that people never have to leave their cars, and it is one that contributes absolutely nothing to this community. I urge the council to reject this proposal.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
So maybe Helen, are you ready after, so one or two more? Yeah, Virginia. So sorry, what's your name? Helen, then Virginia, then Helen, and that's it, if that's okay. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors and Mayor. Thank you for having me here. I'm sure you're all as tired as I am, having worked all day. I'm here to talk about the likely downstream impacts of the Merri Creek corridor, particularly litter and stormwater pollution, as this proposal increases the volume of disposable food and beverage packaging within a catchment that drains directly into the creek. Council has adopted clear strategic direction to protect and restore nature. The Moreland, now Merri-bek Nature Plan identifies development pressures and the need to protect biodiversity and protect habitat condition. For Merri Creek in particular, the development guidelines for the Merri Creek by Merri Creek Management Committee emphasizes protecting the creek from avoidable impacts associated with development, including pollution caused by, carried by stormwater runoff. Litter is not just an amenity issue, it becomes a waterway pollutant. EPA Victoria explains that stormwater runoff moves through gutters and drains into waterways, carrying what is left on the streets, car parks, and other hard surfaces in rain events. Lightweight food, and beverage packaging can wash from the curb into pits, then into the drainage network, and ultimately into the Merri Creek. This risk is well recognized. EPA Victoria has taken enforcement action against major fast food chains for waste pollution at Melbourne outlets and Victorian waterway programs, increasingly Victorian waterway programs increasingly monitor litter entering rivers and creeks because once in the water, it disperses, harms habitat, and creates long-term cleanup costs. Council's own Integrated Water Management 2040 strategy and action plan set a clear outcome of healthy waterways, including actions to reduce stormwater pollutant loads, to reduce the amount of litter, rubbish, and plastics entering the waterways. Approving uses that predictably generate more disposable packaging without strong enforceable controls cuts across that direction. Given the Merri Creek's environmental significance and Council-adopted strategies to protect biodiversity and water quality, I ask that Council refuse this application. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thanks, Virginia. Have you got new points to raise, Virginia?
I feel they are new, yes.
Thank you.
Virginia Mendoza, Shorts Road. So new because Shorts Road seems to be forgotten in a lot of this. Now, I've been in the area for over 20 years, and I first bought a house beside a car yard, opposite a car yard. I know it's an industrial zone, a lot of us do. We're not just moving in quickly and saying, quickly gentrify the place, build everything beautiful. We know where we live and we love where we live. But I think that the developers are a little tone deaf. So the responses that I've received via email, thank you, Ned, for passing them on, have wording such as, based on the addresses provided, it does not appear any material concerns have been raised by the immediate neighbours in respect to amenity or otherwise. Another one, the retail uses are directly adjacent to Sydney Road and have minimal direct interface with residential properties. Now, if you are where I am on Shorts Road, it is direct. I walk out my front gate to your beautiful little path, thank you, and I see it is visual, it is oral, it is olfactory once this is all there. It is direct. It is a very real impact to me and to, we've got 7 of our Shorts Road houses that face it. Then you turn slightly to the right and you have 8 of the Keedy. You turn a bit to the left and you have the back of all the Ararat Street people. These are direct impacts. And I know that a lot of you are local, so I don't think that you're being tone deaf, but I just think that if that is the way they're skimming over our objections and saying things like that, I would just like you all to be aware that no, that is not what Mellicent is. Mellicent is special. It is a jewel, and we need to nurture it because you cannot rebuild places like this, but they're very easy to decimate. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Thanks, Helen.
Thank you. I was going to wait for you. I'm conscious that I'm the last speaker, and I'd ask you just to be patient with me. I'm really appreciative of your time. I understand that you've all received so many objections, and I don't want to preach to the converted, and most things have been covered. There are a few key things that haven't, but actually my role is on behalf of all these people and people who've had their time curtailed. There's, I think, over 130 objectors. I worked out that this amount of time gives each objector about 20 seconds. A third of a minute. So I do ask you just to be patient with me. I'm the last person to speak. So I'm going to go topic by topic and just make sure that all the points that others have raised are wrapped up effectively. I'm going to try and wrap it up for you. I'm also going to speak to the planning law grounds because I want to reassure Council that we have got absolutely clear planning grounds on which to oppose it, and you have absolutely clear planning grounds that you can really confidently reject this. The development overarchingly doesn't meet the planning objectives and it doesn't meet the planning scheme. So I also want to just point out that calling something development doesn't make it good. A good development isn't good just because it's called a development and is something new to an area. In the 70s, they proposed to concrete over the Merri Creek. It was going to be a freeway. It was only because of the vision of some people who knew that it could be something better and not to decimate the Merri Creek that we have it. Can you imagine that if that was a freeway? We have this incredible opportunity. We have a beautiful area. All these people, we know what we've got and we're going to demand something better. So this site, I just also want to refer to the image that was put up at the very start. It's the back of the development, or the Trelaw side. It doesn't show the lights, the massive pylons, all of the signage for these multinational, not local, not small businesses. Under the Planning and Environment Act, the Council must consider the objectives of planning law, the local planning scheme, and any objections made. Sorry, I'll try and get the ranty voice off because that's a lot to listen to.
You can rant, it's fine. Just get it
but it
done.
must also consider any significant effects which the responsible authority considers the use of development may have on the environment, including any significant social effects and economic effects. You've already heard that the jobs data is, I hate to sound callous, rubbish. The 90s didn't even have the internet, like 1997 data, sorry. It also must have regard, the responsible authority, to the number of objectors when considering whether it will have a significant social effect. So the number of objectors can absolutely be taken into account. The Victorian planning overarching objectives that are relevant to this development are to provide fair, orderly, economic and sustainable use and development of land, to secure a pleasant, efficient and safe working, living and recreational environment for all Victorians. You've heard that this site has all of those things, and it's also to balance the present and future interests of all Victorians. Development is future focused. It has to be, because when something's made, we all live with it. That's what this community knows is going to happen. The council's also able to consider any other matter that it considers relevant to the development. So if somebody says that's not a ground, that's actually not true. Council's able to take all of the things, anything that's resonated with you tonight specifically, you can take that into account. It's in the Act. I would also, at this juncture, just point out the other developments which have been proposed tonight. That childcare centre, that looks great. The health hub, that looks great. That's employment. That's got open space. That's got jobs. That's got long-range professional jobs. It feeds back to the community. This development offers us nothing. It's detrimental. The overarching net effect of this is negative. The council also must take into account, under clause 6501, the effect on the environment, human health and amenity of the area, including proximity to public land, including any associated amenity, traffic flow and road safety impacts. These are all really clear grounds for rejection.
I'm sorry, I just need to interrupt you because
Yes.
I need an extension of time.
Sorry.
Councillor Bolton and Councillor Pulford's hands, all those in favour? Declare that carried. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I understand.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Councillor Pulford.
So I'll just now turn to the area. You have heard about so many aspects of this development, but I want to talk about the area. The site itself is zoned Industrial Zone 3. Industrial Zone 3, though, is not a carte blanche to do whatever you want. It has conditions associated with it. The industrial zone is also surrounded by residential zones, and as you just heard from my neighbour, there's also the Shorts Road residents who will be looking directly at this site, and that's important here. The overarching purpose of an Industrial Zone 3 is to provide for industries and associated uses in specific areas where special consideration of the nature and impacts of industrial uses is required. It's to provide a buffer between higher industrial zones and local communities. It has to have uses which are compatible with the nearby community. It's to allow limited retail options, small-scale supermarkets, convenience shops and associated shops. Think Newlands Road, where you have those little independent operators amongst an industrial zone. That's what we're talking about. It's not designed to allow what you normally see on a freeway to be put, as has been said, in the middle of our community. Key is that it is to ensure that the uses of the site do not affect the safety and amenity of adjacent, more sensitive land uses. A more sensitive land use is residential housing. That's in the Act. The key ground for amenity of the neighbourhood and in Industrial Zone 3 is that a use must not adversely affect the amenity of the neighbourhood, including through transport of materials, goods or commodities to or from the land. You've heard about that. Appearance of stored goods or materials, and importantly, this is what I consider a key ground in this zone: emission of noise, artificial light, vibration, odour, fumes, smoke, vapour, steam, soot, ash, dust, wastewater, waste products, grit or oil. The proposal would generate enormous amounts of those for the residents of all the surrounding streets. It's outrageous. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to be too emotional, but it is outrageous.
If you can start to try and wrap it up.
That are proposed to address the traffic coming in and out of the site. All of the traffic flows back out to the most dangerous stretch of road in Merri-bek. We've done an initial count on red light runs. It's 51% of red lights get run in this stretch. Local employment. These are not high-value jobs. They're low-value jobs. Transient communities, they come and go. That's been dealt with.
Thank you.
I'd also, in terms of jobs and job value, the developer's own proposal has a 0% rating for innovation. I'll just let you sit with that. These are dead industries. They've changed, as the jobs data has said. They're not even as good as they said they might be. This site has got so much potential. If the old Kodak site can be decontaminated and used for housing, so can this. This development doesn't contain any housing. 24/7 fast food. I don't need to talk about that, but I would talk about the litter more if I was able. The developer's own traffic report notes that there is shortfall for parking. By design, the overflow will go into those residential streets. They are not intended for people coming and going from the area. Sports and recreation. Parker Reserve's incredibly important to the sporting community. Multiple sports, the baseball club, cricket, soccer. My kids kick the footy there. I'd always hoped for AFL goals, but that's, you know, when you're up against things like this, you've got to temper your expectations. The environment, though. I do want to talk about the impact of light, because as well as the light affecting the residents, as I've said, is important in Industrial Zone 3, there are nocturnal animals in the park. So in addition to the safety concerns of people going into the park at night, which will happen, and decreasing the safety of local residents, the local environmental impact is enormous. Those birds won't get a rest, the residents won't get a rest, and the litter will flow directly to the creek. I urge you all to go for a walk down at the creek at the end of Keady Street. It is stunning. It's the reason I moved to the area. A remediation specialist who's within the community has asked me to also raise this on his behalf. There are serious concerns regarding the lack of planning specific to the management of soil and water contamination from this site. It's an old quarry, it has contamination. The applicant does not meet the Planning and Environment Act requirements, and if approved, this remediation specialist, along with many of us, is prepared to go to VCAT on this ground and is confident that the proposal would be overturned on that basis. An alternate proposal with appropriate remediation to prevent any risk to the Merri Creek is important, and this hasn't been raised, but I want to say that putting a petrol station on a previous quarry has risks of subsidence, structural failure and contamination, including through the groundwater into the Merri Creek. Which, any leakage from any underground infrastructure would go straight to the creek. I'm really close to the end. The community is supportive of development. We see this site, we see what it could be, we want things in this area, but as other people have said, there's opportunities for so much more public space, corridors. The council itself is working towards putting in meadows and putting in these the wetlands area. In other municipalities, I noticed that they're putting sustainably built terraces with a public pocket park, walking and cycling connections, women's property initiatives. There's so much more we can do, and our community knows what we've got and we want better. We're saddened by the lack of vision, and I'll wrap it up really quickly. And this is about you. I know that everybody in this room, I'm really confident, has joined council because they want good decisions for their area, they want to support their local residents, and you want the community to be better and you want the environment to be better for us. So I know it's been a really, really long night, but I would sincerely ask and request that you vote against this proposal unanimously and in full. There's nothing in it that is good for the community, and I know that you hear us, and I'm really grateful. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. All right, now I need to say this in, and I need you to act in good faith here. There is one supporter who's indicated they'd like to speak. Adrian Mead, if you're out there and you would like to approach the lectern, do feel safe and welcome. Maybe Adrian's gone home. Otherwise, I'll hear from Conrad if you would like to come as the applicant. Yeah, thanks. I just had to check because it's... Thanks, Conrad.
Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. My name is Conrad Bruin, Town Planner, appearing on behalf of the permit applicant in support of the application, which has been recommended for approval by council officers. I'd like to begin by thanking council planning officers for their constructive engagement throughout the assessment process, in particular Ned for his responsiveness and transparency. We consider it appropriate to begin by situating the proposal within its broader strategic planning framework. The subject site comprises approximately 1.5 hectares of consolidated land in a highly accessible and strategically located position. It fronts Sydney Road, a major arterial corridor, has multiple street interfaces, strong access to public transport, and convenient connectivity to the Metropolitan Ring Road. Importantly, the land is identified within Council's economic development framework as a core industry and employment area, meaning it is strategically intended to accommodate employment-generating uses. At present, the site is severely underutilised and a missed employment opportunity for the community. This proposal seeks to redevelop the site in a manner consistent with that strategic intent while improving its interface with the surrounding neighbourhood. The development introduces a balanced mix of warehouse, office and retail uses. The more intensive retail components, including the convenience restaurants and service station, are deliberately located along Sydney Road where activity and traffic are already concentrated to minimise impacts on residential areas. The warehouse and office components, which will operate during standard business hours, are positioned to the east, providing separation between the retail uses and nearby dwellings. Turning to traffic, we acknowledge this has been a key issue throughout the process. However, it has been rigorously tested and resolved. Detailed traffic modelling has been undertaken and refined in consultation with the Department of Transport and Planning and Council's traffic engineers. The application now benefits from conditional support from the relevant road authorities, confirming the proposal will not result in unacceptable traffic or road safety impacts. The proposal includes minimal tree removal and introduces approximately 50 new canopy trees, resulting in a net increase in canopy tree cover and an improved public realm outcome. From an economic perspective, the proposal delivers substantial employment benefits. Independent modelling estimates the proposal will deliver approximately 380 jobs across construction and ongoing operations. This is acknowledged and supported by Council's Economic Development Unit and is particularly meaningful in the context of Merri-bek's unemployment rate, which remains above the national average. Overall, the proposal is highly compliant with the planning scheme as set out in the officer report, and any potential off-site amenity impacts can be appropriately managed, particularly through the conditions that the officers have included. Having regard to the revitalisation of the site and employment outcomes, the proposal delivers a clear net community benefit. Thank you again, councillors, for your time and consideration, and to council officers for their continued assistance throughout the process.
Thank you, Conrad. Does anyone have any questions? Then I'll ask please for a motion. Councillor Bolton.
I've got a motion to refuse to grant a planning permit. If I can have a second, I'll speak to it.
Councillor Irvin, you can have a seat if you like, Conrad. Would you like to speak?
I'll speak briefly. I mean, the residents, the community, the objectors have explained a lot of elements of the proposal. When I looked at this proposal and I was trying to think, are there conditions you can introduce to make this application better for residents, that it's impossible to develop enough conditions to make it acceptable for the local community. Like it's, there's a few little things here and there, and obviously the council planners come up with the idea of the bike lane as a way of trying to mitigate some of the traffic issues. But as was explained by Joe and others, that will actually be quite dangerous with a lot of traffic crossing the bike lane to get into the fast food joint. So it's really impossible to make this acceptable. And then I even asked on behalf of the Spry Street residents who directly abut the proposal about deleting the drive-through because it's right up against their back fences. But that wasn't possible under the planning scheme. The only proposal put forward was for acoustic treatment. So I just don't think this is at all feasible. And especially with Keady Street, I mean, it's not just Keady Street, it's that whole little network of dead-end streets with the park and all the rest of it. But Keady Street, I'm an ex-heavy vehicle driver, and just looking at that street, seeing, you know, when you go down a car parked on either side, there's only room for one car, not a medium rigid truck. And the applicant definitely said at the PID meeting it would be suitable for medium rigid trucks. It's not suitable at all. I know exactly what the width of a street needs to be in order to cope with trucks of that scale, especially if there are cars on both sides. And the other thing is the storage units, which have got very little attention through the whole process. They're operating 24/7 in Trelaw Street, and there's no acknowledgement in the report before us tonight about the impacts on residents like in Spry Street, but also Shorts Road. And depending on where you live, the traffic impacts are different. Spry Street has a bus route. The traffic flow coming out of this site will have a big impact on Spry Street. So the people in the area know the impact of this. And it's also Keady Street is part of the Fawkner shimmy. So Fawkner might seem like far away, but actually it's Keady Street is part of a shimmy that goes all the way up to Moomba Park Primary School in the north of Fawkner. And a lot of people now, since Aldi's been established, come down from Fawkner through that shimmy to go to the Aldi and other places, Upfill Bike Path, etc. So I just think we have to refuse this application, and I hope my fellow councillors agree to refuse this application because I can't see any way of making it better.
Thank you. Councillor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to all the residents who have shared their views on the proposed development, both tonight and in contacting us in the last few weeks. These are never easy decisions to make when we have industrial land that abuts residential areas. There are amenity impacts, and we've heard a huge amount of concern from residents about these impacts. In this case, I know that officers worked really hard to specify conditions that go some way to address those concerns, and I do really appreciate and acknowledge those efforts. However, I think that there are still too many outstanding issues that would negatively impact nearby residents and our whole community. I won't sort of reiterate a lot of what we've said. I think firstly we heard about Keady Street, and it's a street that we're trying to improve and make better, and this would really take us backwards when we're trying to make those changes. I think also the impact on the waterways and the Merri Creek is so precious to all of us, and to even the state government recognises its environmental significance. And I think the litter, despite having a litter patrol, I think litter would still get into our waterways and beyond. And while this land is zoned industrial, it's actually zoned local industrial, which means the definition is that it supports local communities, smaller businesses serving localised markets, and local service trades. And I just don't think that three multinational fast food drive-throughs achieve this, and they take up valuable space that could actually contribute to those outcomes. And I am concerned about the 24-hour operations and the impact that that would have, and the fact that there are access points from Keady Street and Trelaw Street that will be accessed 24/7. I think that the lights from the development, the noise from the drive-throughs and from cars accessing it really go beyond the level of negative impacts that you would expect living next to an industrial zone. So for that reason, I'll be supporting Councillor Bolton's motion to refuse this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Irvin. Councillors, I need an extension of time again, please. Councillor Svensson and Councillor Theodosis. Put that to the vote. All those in favour, declare that carried. Are there councillors that would like to speak against the application? No. Councillors in favour? Oh, sorry, against the rejection, the motion, against the motion. Councillor Yildiz?
No, I'm speaking in favour of Councillor Bolton's
Go for it.
motion. Yeah. I just want to, Conrad, I think I genuinely want to acknowledge that well-considered quality development in many respects, but 149 objections, significant level of community concern over the past, in particular, 2 weeks. We just can't ignore the voices. Our role, my role, is to represent the lived experience of residents, and their concerns are consistent and genuine. Traffic impact, I go down Sydney Road almost every day. You get to the corner of Keady and Sydney Road, Keady and Sydney Road, excuse me. The road is very narrow. Spry Street, you've got Trelaw, McCoy, Ararat, all those roads and streets, a gentleman before was talking about how cul-de-sac and congested that area is. I've had friends that have years ago lived in Spry Street, so I know that area reasonably well. And having been born and raised predominantly in Coburg, I get that area. The additional pressure on an already strange local road network, congestion, car parking, pushing overflow, and this is great. We need development, but our infrastructure in that area won't cope with something like this. And then all we're going to be doing is trying to repair, but you can't repair the damage done to people that have bought their homes there with the intention to raise their families. We had 2 young kids. I know why they left. They want to get to bed, to school. They've got school tomorrow. But we had young kids talking about the impact. So I think residents have raised legitimate concerns about the impact on neighbourhood character, and I think their day-to-day livability in the area. We need to get the balance right. Our roles as councillors, yes, great development, very well considered quality, but we need to get the balance right. And in this case, I think that balance has not been achieved. Supporting growth should not come at the expense of existing communities. And for these reasons, I'm going to be voting against this proposal. On the grounds of the issues that residents have raised repeatedly, and Chris raised the many concerns really well, Chris, articulated extremely well. And look, I think we need to actively listen and stand with the community as I'm in this position due to these people. Whether they voted for me or not, it doesn't matter. I have to represent them, and 2,800 cars projected in Keady Street. The infrastructure damage that this is going to have, I think far outweighs us supporting this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Other councillors who'd like to speak? Councillor Svensson.
I want to say again an enormous thank you to all of the residents who've contacted us, both who've turned up tonight and contacted us throughout this entire process. I think I can only imagine the amount of time and energy all of you must have put into turning out what is an incredibly impressive community campaign. So a very big thank you. It's often a struggle to get people interested in what's happening at council and particularly in planning. So I really appreciate the really thoughtful and considered response that you've had to this application tonight. I'm going to be voting to refuse this application because I think any potential benefits of this application, which I do think are seriously limited, are significantly outweighed by the substantial harms that this application presents to our community. And I think thankfully in this case, unlike a lot of other cases, I believe we have some really strong arguments at our disposal that if this ends at VCAT, which it quite possibly will, I think we've got some really good arguments at our disposal to say why we think this is inconsistent with the planning scheme and not a good outcome for our community. And I wish we had those same arguments available to us in a lot of other applications that we consider as well. But I'm hoping that we can have a unanimous decision on this tonight. And thank you again for the really impressive campaign that you put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Svensson. Anyone else? Okay, I will also be supporting Councillor Bolton's proposed refusal. And I commend your work, Councillor Bolton, of pulling this together as the ward councillor. I'm not the ward councillor, but this is my neighbourhood. I play baseball there. I run up and down that wooden staircase like a champion. I, walk to the Aldi across that back street. I take my dog up and down the creek. You probably know this is my patch, right? And it's a hectic stretch of Sydney Road. And if it was maybe something different, and it wasn't a scenario where if I wanted to go to Macca's or Aljana or Guzman, I could drive up to Campbellfield, better known as Camberfield, then it might be different. But I can go literally a few K up the road if I want to eat that junk food. It doesn't mean I will, but if I wanted to, I could. It's all right there. It's not a unique offering. And my real concern with this application is actually the warehouses. Because although there are 24 storage facilities, there are also 25 warehouses. And my concern is about what is going in those warehouses. We have a situation in our industrial areas to the north of where I live where a lot of dubious stuff is happening in warehouses. And the culture that goes in those warehouses cost a 16-year-old boy his life 2 weekends ago because there was drag racing happening out of, you know, some hectic scenario in the back streets. And we need to be acting in a way where we are discouraging this type of behaviour, not facilitating it in our neighbourhoods. This is the beginning, right? These guys will be potentially going to VCAT if this is refused here. You will need to stay organised and stay the course, I imagine. It's not over. There are groups of communities everywhere that fight these organisations for a long period of time. So far, I suspect you have our support to refuse this application, but you're not done yet. I'll put it to the vote because I think we've everybody's spoken. So all those in favour of Councillor Bolton's proposed rejection, and I declare that carried unanimously. Yeah. So if that can be recorded. Okay. I will now ask Ned to outline the next steps, please, Ned. And Conrad, thank you as well for being in the room. At the end of the day, you're just a human being like the rest of us.
Thank you, Mayor. The Council has decided to issue a refusal to grant a planning permit for the application subject to the grounds contained within the alternate recommendation. Following the issue of the refusal to grant a planning permit, both the applicant and objecting parties will receive a copy of the refusal. The applicant will have 60 days to appeal Council's decision to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ned. Councillors, we've come to the end of the meeting, so I'd like to thank everybody watching on the live streaming for your interest in council matters and wish you all a good night. And I'd like to thank the gallery as well for your patience. And I'd like to declare the council meeting closed at 10:10. Good night, everyone.